And we're going to push start. Okay, so my system says it's live. Yeah, we'll wait a few minutes. Yeah. Yeah, no kitty cam today. TechLore is taking the kitty cam up.
I apologize. I'm sorry, I'm nowhere near as cute as a cat.
Yeah, well, you clearly have been messing with flea-infested kitties for a day.
I do not have fleas.
That's good. That's good. All right, so greetings on this end. I think greetings on your end there as well.
Yeah, no, it's nice to talk to you, Tom. I mean, I still remember when you tuned into the first live stream and, checked out your channel, and it was really awesome to see someone at least make, Linux seem like it's not the big obstacle that everyone likes to make it seem.
Yeah, and I wonder if a lot of that is just the geeks wanting to be geeks, and the reality is I switched to Linux not because I'm a geek, but because I needed the better option, and Windows 10 was no longer it.
Yeah, especially with the privacy side of things, so I don't blame you at all.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that OBS doesn't go totally crazy. It's actually redlining despite pushing 6 gigs a second, so which is kind of funny. It's because I'm running the Google Hangouts and everything else and stuff. It didn't actually behave this erratically when I ran this on Nextcloud. It's just Nextcloud jiggles a little bit, and so we thought this would be better. So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say greetings to everybody on my end. I have Libre Secure on my end. Cool War Boy, how's it going there? Keegan the Tennessean wants to know if TechLore brought his own kitties. Let's see. Cool War Boy did a stream today. I thought you did 2 streams today, didn't you, Cool War Boy? I don't know. Mugen, greetings there, live for his presumptions. Let's see, Kitson, Brian the Computer Geek, hello. Frost Ranger of the Frozen Realm, greetings. Steve Anderson, good evening, Mr. Anderson. Mark Yates, what's up? Anthony Myran, hello there. And Albert Crow, hello. All right, guys, and for you guys just joining in, we have TechLore as the other gentleman on the stream today. I would consider him like a VPN dude. So.
And I'd like to introduce Switch to Linux. So this is Tom. His channel is all about Linux. He talks about tons of different distributions. It is great to see you do what you do.
And tech and privacy and philosophy, all sorts of weird stuff
well
with
that.
Linux.
Yeah, actually check out all the different channels he does. And he does talk about privacy security. He just did a video talking about apps on the Google Play Store that take unneeded permissions, like abusing your microphone and stuff like that. Yeah. So very much on the same topic of the things we talk about here.
Yeah. So that's cool. So let's see. You want to say hi to your folks over there?
Yeah. Let's see. Looks like we have some people on. Everyone's asking for what the secret video is. I am unable to say anything at the moment. That's you, King Machiavelli. So I wanted to. So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I reached out to you to talk about VPNs mostly because I catch all your videos on VPNs, and I know we have a lot of healthy discussion on VPNs on my end, and I don't generally advocate for them quite as heavily, just because I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of gimmick involved in VPNs, especially since everyone jumped on. It's like, we want to have VPNs, and so everyone's coming out of the woodwork with their own VPNs, including Facebook. And, of course, the biggest downside of a VPN is, sure, your ISP may not be able to see what you're doing, but whoever that owns that VPN can see everything you're doing.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, tell us about some of your favorites.
So VPNs, at least, I've reviewed so many VPNs, and what it definitely has turned into is it's been a transfer of trust. So you're transferring the trust from your ISP, which we know you can't trust because they do sell your data, they do harvest your data, and they do analyze what you do. It's a complete invasion of privacy. So you're transferring that trust from an ISP to a VPN service. Now, a lot of people definitely say that's not the smartest thing to do because some VPN services aren't the most trustworthy. But at the same time, no VPN should be trustworthy, in my opinion. I think that every VPN should be utilized as a tool to help improve your privacy and security. So it's definitely good for you, Tom, to question whether or not how effective a VPN should be and how they are very gimmicky.
Yeah, especially if and I've seen some interesting ones. There was one I can't remember if it was. I don't think it was Constant Contact, but it was one of those. It was one of those mail services, right? Where they were like, we're going to go ahead and, you have this thing, and then you actually read the terms and conditions, which nobody does. You read the terms and conditions, and the whole terms and conditions is like, yeah, we can see everything you're doing. We'll log everything you're doing. We're going to sell it to third parties for advertising. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
For free
stuff. At that point,
know?
There's no point even going with the service because your ISP is already doing that. So at that point, the only benefit from using the VPN is the security benefit. And I think that's something that's really overlooked because free VPNs have a really bad reputation because if it's free, you're typically the product. That's how the saying goes. Although it completely excludes, free and open source software. But outside of that, free VPNs have a bad reputation. But there is a use case for free VPNs. There are people who don't care about their privacy as much, even though they should, and they just want to download something or watch a movie in a different country. And sometimes a free VPN offers that functionality. Or sometimes free VPNs just offer encryption. So if you're going to a public coffee shop, if I go to Starbucks with some friends and I want to make sure that there's no hackers trying to snoop in on my traffic, I will get the encryption benefit. Although I would never really recommend a free VPN if you're looking for something to boost your privacy.
And that's a fascinating thing, as we were talking the other day, is that the VPNs oftentimes right now, because privacy is a big buzzword and a lot of people are capitalizing on it, and I fortunately came to the table before everyone was capitalizing on it in a way, so I feel a little better. I don't feel like I'm riding this fad wave, but
the whole Facebook thing
with everybody on privacy these days. VPNs and privacy has been the biggest thing, but what you had said is that security is should be your primary reason for using a VPN.
Yes.
And
exactly.
And that's a good thing. So if you're chilling at coffee shops a lot, if you're out and about, maybe you're a college student and you're visiting all the local colleges, and I think you're in college, right?
Yeah, I'm in college.
So if you're visiting all the local coffee shops, like I live in Penn State main campus area, so it's not unusual for me to go downtown, spend some time on campus, whatever else. If I'm tapping into any wireless networks, I absolutely want to use a VPN. So that's one of the good services to use because really it was originally designed to produce a secure encryption network into somebody else's system. And that's why they can log everything you're doing. Yeah. So,
and not to interrupt, but if there's any questions on your side, don't be afraid to ask me, and then I'll also keep an eye on my questions on my side, and I'll introduce them. But you're absolutely right about the privacy buzz term. Nowadays, especially after the whole Facebook scandal and Mark Zuckerberg going in front of the senators, it's kind of become just a typical thing to say. Oh, we care about privacy. Oh, privacy is a big concern now. But people typically confuse privacy with security, and those are two separate things. And for example, me in college, like you said, I do have to use a VPN because everyone in the entire school is connecting to one single Wi-Fi network, which means that they're able to access. I can view all the different devices on the school network. It doesn't mean I'm able to access them, but I can view every single device that's connected to it. And if someone really wanted to, they could do more with that. So that's why it's important to have your traffic encrypted, because by default it isn't, unless you're using HTTPS. But even then, there still are some things that you want to encrypt that don't get tunneled through a browser.
Yep.
Is that?
Yeah, that's good, and that's your solution. Let me tell you what my solution is. Obviously, one thing is the only reason I have a smartphone is to share internet. So I'm never logging onto strange Wi-Fi's. I got a cell phone with me, unless I get into one of those weird circumstances. Now, what I actually do when I'm going to be traveling for more than a day or two, I just dropped half of it, but Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi allows me to create a VPN, which gives me not only secure and encrypted traffic where I'm at, but also access to my work files that are still in my LAN in my office. And so building a VPN is certainly one option if you're the geeky kind, and if you're 100%. Not the geeky kind, pick up a VPN. It's worth the investment if you are traveling a lot and need that.
Definitely. So, for the advanced users, building your own VPN is great, and it does offer that huge security benefit. Again, with privacy, it makes it difficult because you own everything, typically out of your home or out of your own Wi-Fi network, which means that it's not really an anonymous solution, which is what people think VPNs are for when they're really not. Someone just asked, if I wanted to be privacy-oriented online, should I use a pseudonym? And there's so much more to being anonymous online than just setting up a pseudonym. There's so many things you have to take care of. And that is something that VPNs are for your security. And I think that's what really needs to be the big takeaway here, is that privacy and security are two entirely different things, and we have to use different tools to boost each different definition.
And I know for me, what I have a big time with, and I spend some time talking to the kids that I mentor and going through school in this digital age. I mean, I graduated school without having an email address. I mean, I didn't have an email address until I finished school, like high school.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it weird? And I got my first email address in college, and it's like we never used them. It's just like, okay, if you had to do something. I still remember writing professors' notes on paper and setting them in their mailbox to get some, responses. I mean, that's the way the world worked back then, of course. So with that being said, our modern day kids were so trained on technology, and we're trained to trust everything in the school system. And so we're trained to, a form falls up on the website, so you got to, of course, hit it. Is it no wonder we are constantly under attack by phishers?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I mean, because you're absolutely right. Nowadays, we're trained to trust everything and not ask questions.
Yeah.
You get an email, you just won this. Oh, I won something. Let's go take a look at it. We aren't taught, and I think this should be taught in school, how to properly use the internet. Because lots of these tools that are used to either invade our privacy or security pretty much function on people who aren't properly trained on how to properly use the internet. And you're absolutely right. There's this idea that everyone is utilizing our data in the proper way. We sign up for a Facebook account. Oh, Facebook's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're not going to do anything wrong with it. So we can definitely trust them. Google, they've never suffered a major hack. So they must be doing great things with their data.
As much.
Yeah, and we also have this, I don't know why, but we always feel like we have to give honest information, and we have to give the most information to a profile. If you're opening a dating profile, people feel inclined to put their real names, their real ages, their real Facebook accounts, and everything about themselves on there when they don't really need to.
Yeah, and that's another valid point. The difference is when I first got the internet, and I think I was in college, you go down, you get a little ISP, which is a local phone number. You'd call in a local phone number on your, I had a 33.6 modem, and you dial into the internet, and man, the mantra, you do not put any real information on the net. And now it's just like, you're supposed to put your information on the net. What? Let's stop real quick for a question. Somebody actually asking on your channel, King Machiavelli has asked, can you use NordVPN on Linux Mint? So I'm going to ask you a question first. Can you get a .obvn file from Nord?
Yes. So Nord does use OpenVPN for configuration files. Yeah. So
yes, and I'm going to actually jump over on my screen. If you're watching on my screen, if you go over to any Linux distro, you can just come on down to your network connections, and add a connection, and add a VPN, OpenVPN protocol, and import the file, and you are connected. So this is Linux Mint. We are recording this. I'm recording this on my end on Linux Mint. So yes, the answer is yes.
And I just made my audience aware that they can ask you questions as well.
Yep.
Explicitly, because they seem to be talking about proxies a lot. So someone here on my side asked, are proxies also good? No. Proxies, VPNs, and Tor are always mixed into the same discussion when they're really not the same tools. So all proxies are good for is hiding where an IP address comes from. That's it. It doesn't typically encrypt your traffic, and they don't really do anything else, and you also have to configure them in every individual program. VPNs encrypt everything, and it's system-wide. So everything that's on your system is going to run through a VPN, including Windows updates or anything done by any other program. So that's kind of the main difference. You should always go with a VPN if you're going for max security. Although proxies do also have their use case.
Good. I have Keegan the Tennessee and at TechLore. Your first video I ever watched was Getting Off the Grid video. And I think that's the one that introduced me to your channel as well. I think I subbed to you because of that video.
Oh,
that was a good
thank
video.
You. I will say about that video, A, it's outdated, and B, there was some wrong information. So in advance, I want to apologize for not using the absolute best information. That was kind of a rough draft video, I think, looking back, and I do hope to update it over summer sometime.
Yeah, and I remember disagreeing with one or two things. I just can't remember what they were off the top, but it was overall an amazing video.
Yeah,
thank you for that. And that's what I have done a really good job of staying off the grid, despite, live streaming on YouTube. And of course, we're using Google Hangouts. And we had an internal discussion. Do we use the Nextcloud, which is, of course, my own self-hosted thing? The problem is occasionally it'll hiccup a little bit. And I think that is entirely has to do with where I have my stun server hosted. It may or may not. And I'd like to talk to the Nextcloud folks to see, is there anything I can do to make that work a little bit better? But we just decided to use Google Hangouts. But other than this, and the fact that I'm a web developer, so you better believe I have Google accounts for websites, at least access to Google accounts for websites, I use Google services a shocking low amount of times. That's the thing, is getting off grid is important to do.
I have a question here for you. So the MGTOW loner asked, is Linux good for activists trying to protect their information?
I would say yes, if you are using the right Linux distros. I have been making a big stink lately about the Ubuntu, which collects not a lot of data, and it's not spyware, but it is collecting a fingerprint of your system at install now as of 1804. And if it is an opt-out option, so you have the option to not send it. But the thing is that I actually used to do a lot of work with an activist group. That it was a company that specialized in building websites for activists, and we had to make sure we covered all the bases. Now, most of the people were literally using Windows and Mac. Why? I had no idea. But I was using Cubes for all my work for them, and so. You want to use the right Linux distro. As much as I love Linux Mint, if I was an activist and doing things that I absolutely had to be critical, I would not be using Linux Mint for that work. You'd either want to use Tails with a persistent drive, or you'd want to use Cubes. And the reason is that those are Tails, of course, is totally anomic, so it'll completely erases everything you do on it except for the individual files you save on that persistent drive. Cubes is more for installed on a system. It is a complete disk encryption, and then it runs everything through a series of virtual boxes. You have a automatic connection to Tor and an automatic connection to Freenet, whichever one you need to use, and you can isolate different things in different ways. It is absolutely amazing, and I need to update my videos on those. I have some tutorials on Cubes 3, and I want to do some on Cubes 4, which just came out. So absolutely, I would, in fact, if that's where you find yourself, I would absolutely be using Linux. Just use the right Linux distros.
There you go. Great answer. Don't use Windows. That's the number one rule.
And a shocking amount of people do, unfortunately.
Absolute Dank asked, is it possible for Linux to be compromised?
Yes.
Absolutely. Any piece of software can be compromised, but Linux is open source. So do you want to talk about how that could help Linux?
Yeah, and speaking to that, one of the things a lot of people say is, "Oh, look at how many bugs there are in Linux versus Windows." Well, the reason is Linux is open source. Windows is not. Windows only reports those when they have to. The majority of what they know, but they don't know about. There's a shocking small amount of zero-day exploits, which are the big things you want to be worried about. Your zero-day. Windows has a lot of zero-day. In fact, NSA, you did the awesome video on the, was it 14 Eyes? However many eyes it was.
The 14 Eyes program, yeah.
The 14 Eyes program. Those guys know the zero exploits in Windows, and they are the only group that does not report them back to Microsoft because they want to exploit them. Stuxnet actually had 3 different zero days as redundancy built into it. and that was a big deal.
Unfortunate.
You know. But Linux, yeah, I mean, you got to keep it up to date. And of course, depending on how hardcore you are, you might want to stick only with free repositories, free drivers, free systems. It depends on where you sit on that scale. I don't care that much. I'm legitimately not doing anything that's all that fascinating or interesting, but at the same token, I do take a lot of active role to make sure people can't snoop. But I want the computer working well, so I use non-free drivers for my videos and whatever else because it works better.
Yeah. And open source software typically works better in general. I just read an article a few days ago that talked about the number of exploits found in Windows, Mac OS, and the Linux kernel. And it talks about how there's different exploits that can be done on Windows and Mac OS and how the number doesn't really decrease every year, the average number of exploits. Whereas Linux, there will be some years where the exploits are a little bit higher, but in general, it's always on a steady decline because people are able to view all the code, they're able to help, and they're able to find anything that might be wrong with it. And with the issue with proprietary software like Apple and Windows is that no one can view it except the company itself. So they're the only people that can fix and find any problems with the software. So it's open source, I think, is the way to go.
Yeah.
For people who care about privacy and security, and it's awesome to have someone who always pushes people to use Linux because that's exactly one of the big things about Linux.
Excellent. If you're joining in late on my end, I'm talking with TechLore. You can check out TechLore's channel. The channel links and his website is in my description down below. I see I'm up to 50 viewers. I close yours. I'm monitoring your comments, but I'm not monitoring your live stream because OBS is already having a hissy fit.
And this is Switch to Linux. He talks everything about Linux, privacy, and security. And if you have any questions, make sure to shoot away, and he will definitely be sure to answer them.
I have Anthony Moran. This is more for you than for me. Anyone know about Proton VPN? And you do know about Proton VPN, so give us the lowdown on Proton VPN.
Proton VPN is going to be one of the most trustworthy VPNs because they're made by Proton Mail, and Proton Mail has a very good reputation in the industry. So they also, something else that's really cool about them is they use something called secure core servers, and these secure core servers, they offer pretty much a higher type of security by encrypting through 2 VPN servers. Also, most VPN providers rent out servers to third parties, and this is how a lot of them work, including Proton. But Proton does offer servers which they actually host in their own facilities, which is definitely something that some people consider to be a reason why Proton should really be trusted, because they're actually handling everything themselves. And I think it's in some old war zone or something, so no one can get down there. It's like the Avengers movie where they go down 50 stories under the ground, and then there's tons of servers down there. It's kind of similar to that, actually.
Yeah, they're the CERN group, aren't they? So they're the ones that are going to end the world with that whole CERN explosion project, aren't they?
Maybe. But Proton is very much a trusted service, and in my review, I think they scored 4 stars with their Plus account, which isn't very high on my channel. And the reason why that is because I reviewed them very early on. They didn't have a Mac client, they didn't have Android or an iOS client. But speeds and the security were absolutely fantastic. And I'm actually doing a 6-month update right now. I'm actually recording the video today and tomorrow.
Very good.
And all I'm going to say is their score definitely went up because they've made so many improvements in the last 6 months.
Very good. Very good. Keegan the Tennessean says, what does terms and conditions mean?
Oh, it's the stuff you should be reading on every service.
Oh, boy. I lost my place. There we are. All right.
Terms and conditions actually aren't as important as the privacy policy. Any VPN you go with, you should be reading the privacy policy.
Yeah.
Because that's where they're actually going to tell you. They might say they don't log, but they'll say, oh, we do log, but just your IP address and at the time that you connect to the server. And if you ever looked at time-based attacks where people can look at the time that you can connect to a server, the amount of bandwidth going through the server, that's enough information to tell who connected to the server at what time. So it's tough to think of an example at one point in time, but if someone knows that user A is connecting to this Wi-Fi network at 10 p.m., and the network doesn't keep any logs, but it does log that person's IP address and that the person connected at 10 p.m., if someone knows that user A used 10 megabits of bandwidth, and the server knows that there's 10 megabits of bandwidth used, that's enough information to tie two people together, which makes your whole user not so anonymous. Their name's Henry. And so no logs, it has to be no logs. Always read the privacy policy, 100%.
Yeah, and I think actually after we were talking, who was it? Level 1 Text did a discussion about this. Of course, we were talking about Pure VPN, which I looked at once before, and you had said there were some issues, so I decided I'm not going to use them as any affiliate. But they had actually identified private internet access and said, yeah, they were subpoenaed, and they said, sorry, we have nothing.
Exactly.
So, and that's the important part.
Definitely. And it's good to see PIA do that. And it's sad because we can't verify no-log policies. And even if it has been verified in the past, it doesn't mean that there isn't a gag order established on a company. And that's something I talked about in the 14 Eyes video, and it's kind of talks about jurisdiction and how that all works.
Yeah, and World of Linux on that same trend says, how would you know if they would still collect your data, because VPNs can be really scrappy? And you're kind of saying we really can't tell.
That you pretty much have to put your money into the service that you trust. And that is where VPNs fall. And that's why you shouldn't trust them for privacy concerns, only security concerns. And if you do rely on it for privacy, there's always a possibility that the NSA or the FBI or some intelligence agency actually does have a gag order established on this company, and they are keeping logs on you. PIA was, like you said, they denied logs. They said that we can't help you because we don't keep logs. So if a company like that goes through a system where they can't supply logs, then that's a good sign.
Yeah. Richie, how to properly do our taxes? I can discuss that on another channel if you want. I can teach you how to properly keep your books. I hire an accountant. I'm not messing with that stuff.
Switch to Linux. There's a question from QWERTY Dvorak. What Linux distro is most privacy-based?
Most privacy-based. Privacy or security? Privacy-based. Ooh.
Privacy.
I mean, as far as collecting data, etc., like what somebody else could see, I would say Tails. And the reason Tails built their system to actually report a common fingerprint across systems. So if 15 of us all grab Tails, download it, and log into the same system, Tails, in theory, as long as you're not messing with anything, should actually report the same fingerprint, despite what your computer hardware is. I think that Tails, if I'm reading the question right. So I would say that one. Of course, most Linux distros don't collect data. There's a few that will. Obviously, Ubuntu is starting to collect some. Fedora apparently has a program which may be opt-in or opt-out. I don't remember because I don't run Fedora much. Debian has an opt-in. The PopCon application is one of the ones in Ubuntu system, but that's actually a Debian package that is opt-in. So they do not install it unless you expressly say to. So most Linux distros in general are more privacy-focused.
And you talked about how Tails pretty much makes everyone have the same fingerprint. And that's exactly what Tor does also. So for those of you asking what Tor does, that's what Tor does. And Tor is built to make you quote-unquote anonymous because it tries to make everyone look the same. VPNs don't do that. So just to clear that up, because some people are asking what's the difference between VPNs, Tor, and proxies. Anonymization tool.
Okay. Pizza Loving Nerd on my end says, looking for a VPN I can use at school to get stuff unblocked. And it needs to work on a Windows 10 phone.
Pretty much any VPN should work as long as they don't block that specific port.
Okay.
But you can always change the port.
Since Pizza, since I know more about you and I know you're a technical geek, pick yourself up a Raspberry Pi, build your own VPN. I have a tutorial on my channel. Do that, build your own VPN, then from your school, VPN right back into your own home internet from school. There you go.
That definitely works. Why? Okay, this is a question for you actually. We could both, chip in here. Why do VPNs not create full Linux clients, or is it just because they're lazy?
I think it's because pretty much any Linux already completely supports any Open VPN protocol out of the box. You don't have to install anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rather use the software on Linux than install a separate client anyway. And I think most Linux users would feel the same.
I would definitely, yeah, because in general, Linux users are going to be, I don't want, they're going to be on the more tech savvy end of things. And I think that most of those people in general would want to use OpenVPN over a client. However, I do love it when a company does offer a Linux client, because it does show that they do care about privacy and they are trying to support people who maybe don't enjoy using OpenVPN. And I like to talk about that a lot, and I do actually encourage companies to use Linux clients because it is good for Linux too. Showing that they do have a Linux client kind of gets people looking at it and saying, oh, people who don't know what Linux is, and they're saying, what is Linux? And they can start looking into it, and it shows that Linux isn't this, this OS that nobody uses and it's starting to go away. It shows that people are trying to get more and more on Linux. It's an amazing Linux client. So if you need a VPN for Linux, AirVPN has the best client for Linux.
Mm-hmm.
Client and it's open source and everything. It's great.
Yeah, I'm getting some notes about a little bit of buffering and lag, but I think I'm seeing your internet going a little bit shaky too. Mine seems to be holding pretty strong, but you're getting a little pixelated on my end.
Sorry, I really, when I'm back at school, believe it or not, our school has amazing internet. It's like 120 megabits download and 70 megabits upload. So I can it's like go back
all day long.
Here's a question by Joe C. Does it concern you at all that Microsoft is now on the Linux Foundation?
Yes. Not as much as you'd think, because despite them being there, it would concern me more if Microsoft were on the Linux Foundation and Linus Torvalds has passed away. That would really concern me. Because really Linus Torvalds holds this thing together, which is kind of scary, but he has redundancies in place to make sure nothing sketchy goes on with the code. It's problematic in that and this is that huge debate. It's been raging for a while, much more so when Microsoft bought GitHub, where people are saying, well, look at the recent track history. But the problem is you can't just look at the recent track history. Microsoft has a 30-year track history of embrace, extend, extinguish. And that's a problem. And yes, I know it's a different CEO that said, quote, Linux is a cancer than the guy is there now. But this is the modus operandi for anybody who is trying to get in there. You don't go in there hostile towards the Linux community with your money going, we're going to hostilely buy into you. No, you embrace it. You love it. You give it hugs. You treat it like BSD. And then... And so yeah, it's concerning because that, but at the same token, it is, for Microsoft, it's going to be very, it is going to be a bad foe to win because the Linux community is far more resilient and far more stubborn than Microsoft engineers could possibly be. So yes, it's concerning, but I'm not all that concerned, because suppose it just gets totally crazy, at least what we have in the past is still here and we can build off it, and somebody else will take it and fork it to somebody else. As my good friend Toss, that's usually joining me on Life in Linux, says, the problem with Linux is everything gets all forked up. So that's
a good way to
what
put
happens.
It's pretty similar on the cryptocurrency side of things, because one project is going the completely wrong direction. There you go. You got a brand new project with brand new ideas. So,
and that's where Mate came from. GNOME went out and did the GNOME 3 thing that most people didn't like, and so Mate's like, no, we're going to stick with this GNOME 2 and develop it this way. And of course, Linux Mint did the same thing. They developed something that's kind of like GNOME 2 based on GNOME 3.
Another question for you from Matt Thompson. Is Linux Mint good for privacy?
Um, I don't have any problem with it. Linux Mint has. I think Linux Mint has a bad rap among the Linux community, and I think the major reason people are doing that is because it's a Linux distro that you can set it up, you can install it, and for the average typical person, typical hardware, you don't have to keep tinkering with it when an update breaks something. And so I really think that that's where the bad rap comes from, is that it doesn't let you be a geek in the back corner fixing your computer every other week. That's why I don't run Arch, okay? I don't have time for that. Like I said, I approach Linux from the user standpoint, where I wanted to get in here in Linux and use Linux in such a way that that I could get my work done. And I'm not getting work done if I'm spending half of an afternoon fixing a computer. Linux Mint did have one issue about a year and a half ago where their website was hacked. It wasn't the software. A website was hacked. Somebody uploaded malicious ISO images for 2 hours or so. If you downloaded the image, you would have gotten the malicious one. Of course, everybody that verified your image wasn't affected because the image did not verify right. And so as far as all that's concerned, Linux Mint does have some proprietary stuff, here and there just to make sure things work. And that's not too uncommon in this day and age. But as far as security and privacy, where they are on privacy, they take active stances to never collect data. And that was a big deal with Ubuntu coming out and the new Linux Mint 19 coming out here in a couple weeks. They are based on Ubuntu 18. Big question, do they have the same data collection? And the answer is no, they don't.
Interesting. A personal question, can you explain the way Ubuntu gets updates? Because I feel like, because I have to typically install virtual machines and stuff to test the VPNs on the Linux clients to make sure they work. Can you explain to me how to do the update process? Because I feel like every month there's a new version of Ubuntu and they just keep releasing newer versions.
They do, so they do one in April and they do one in October, and it's set. So you have your 1604, your 1610, your 1704, your 1710, 1804, 1810. So those are their major releases. Cool. The usually I think it's the even year, so 16, 18, 20 are LTS, long-term stable, so you can run those. Those will get incremental patch upgrades. So you'll see 16041, 16042, 16043. Those are security patches, but the 17 and the 18 versions will have new features. So, and yeah, there's going to be updates in them, every month easily, because there's always new updates in Linux as mostly security patches. Now, your difference between something like an Ubuntu running an LTS and an Arch, or maybe let's say a Debian and an Arch, the major thing that separates those two distros is that Debian relies on its stable. It doesn't keep updating packages. You're not going to get a lot of new features. If you build a computer with Debian, it's probably going to be running perfectly fine. It's going to get the security patches, but you're not going to get the latest software. It's going to be running fine for about 5 or so years because they release when they get around to it, not on some set schedule. Versus Arch is just constantly updating everything, not just the latest security updates, but the latest packages as well. So you'll get more cutting-edge software on Arch. But that means more possibility of breaking stuff. So that's kind of the breakdown. It depends on what you want to use. And they're both good. They're both good for their own uses.
Got it.
Okay, Mike Washburn. My old ISP caches many common sites. Does VPN assure DNS are also encrypted? Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a very good question. That's going to typically depend on, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, what most VPNs use their own DNS server. So it actually doesn't go through your ISP's DNS. So if you download NordVPN on your system, connect you to NordVPN's DNS servers, which they pre-configure to be encrypted and make sure none of your data leaks. If a lot of people, though, I wouldn't recommend this, but a lot of people try to use other DNSs on VPNs. So they'll use the Google DNS or they'll use the Cloudflare DNS, which, by the way, Cloudflare's DNS is not as private as they like to make it seem. Always, as long as you trust a VPN, recommend going with the VPN's pre-configured DNS because they their system, and typically it is privacy and security focused because it's from a VPN company.
Good. Yeah. A question on my end. What's your thought about 1.1.1.1?
To see something like that coming out, and it's a great project, and it's awesome to see it get media coverage and publicity, and people seem to be caring about privacy. Articles, there's so much stuff going on related to privacy on the internet than I've seen in the last 3 to 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, torn open a new what. You have all these different companies come out as being super private, and it seems like people I talk to now seem to be more. Normally, I'm the only person in the room who's using a privacy screen protector, taping up my webcam, and doing all this other stuff. I'm seeing taped up webcams everywhere. I'm seeing people talk about privacy, so it seems to be more mainstream.
Good.
But there's a huge lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
So people think that taping up their webcam is all they need to make themselves private and secure when they're, logged on to Facebook, on Google Chrome, thinking that, they're totally private on the internet because they taped up their webcam. Point one is another example of this, that it's a company saying they're really private, but if you actually read their privacy policy, they do still collect quite a bit of information about you. I would recommend it over an ISP because ISPs clearly abuse their power, and I don't think Cloudflare is going to do that as much.
Mm-hmm.
Problems with it, and it's not a perfect solution, but it's still a step in the right direction, and it's good to see people seem to care about it more. That's a big step.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one for you from Anthony Martin. What about a sandwich? VPN into Tor into VPN?
VPNs over Tor are actually a very controversial area, and there's no right answer, believe it or not. Tunneling things through a VPN encrypts things before it hits the Tor network. Theoretically, even if a Tor exit node was compromised, they still wouldn't be able to see where it came from because it came from a VPN server. So it's like an extra layer of protection, but at the same time, if your VPN can't be trusted, then it actually ruins your protection a little bit. So there's actually, if you go on, I believe, Tor's subreddit, if you go to subreddit Tor, one of the main sticky pages talks about using VPNs over Tor, and it goes through all the pros and cons. So I'd recommend going to that subreddit because they can kind of explain that problem much better than I can.
Yeah.
Right now. For you, I have a laptop from 2015. Will Linux still be usable?
In 2015, yeah, absolutely. And that's the great thing about Linux is there are a ton of distros that work just fine on them. So from 2015, what do I have? 2015. I think my netbook, one of the computers I used to writing my books, I developed full books on a laptop from that era. Now, if it's a low spec, you want to run something like Linux Lite or Peppermint OS, something like that. MX Linux is good for that as well. But if it's a standard laptop from then, anything's going to run on it. 2015 is fairly new. Like if you were going I think I bought my first real computer in 1997. The difference between 1997 computer and the computer I bought in 2001, radical difference in computer technology. But from 2015 to now, they're about the same. I mean, in fact, if you're buying Apple, they are the same.
Someone asked, it's a two-part question. I can quickly answer the second part, but the first part's for you. If you don't want to be monitored, which is better, Linux or Windows 10? And can I use Nord on Linux? Yes, you can use Nord on Linux. You can go ahead and talk about
if you don't want to be monitored, just the first thing you do is you just uninstall Windows. Yeah, and the thing is that Windows, and a lot of people don't remember this, but when Windows 10, it's only been out for 6 months, right? They're like, oh, people have looked at 3,272 pictures on Windows. Well, that's an oddly specific number for Windows to know exactly how many people looked at how many images on Windows 10. It's an oddly specific number because they know it. And this is another one here. Are you aware of, there was a time, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but the WMA codecs were removed from Windows.
I didn't hear about that.
This was found out. This was in Creators Update like last year or so. It was found out because a bunch of people that were using Napster legally, because you can legally use Napster now, you can download files, and a lot of people are like, well, WMA files are smaller. I got Windows, whatever. Downloaded all their files, and they found out they could no longer listen to their files if their computer was not connected to the internet. So it turns out that the solution was don't upgrade Windows 10. Well, Windows 10 upgrades itself if it wants to. So, not good advice.
That's hilarious.
Yes, I covered that actually. It was from over in the Napster forums. It was hilarious to see that. But apparently they did. I don't know if it's still the case or not. But if anybody knows, let me know. But apparently, yeah, Windows 10 got rid of the WMA codec. So anytime you play a WMA file, it has to go to the internet to grab the codecs to play the file on your computer, and that kind of means data's going back and forth. So.
That's ridiculous. That kind of reminds me of Apple not including a calculator on their iPad, but you can still use Siri to fetch results.
That is true.
Sorry, I have a big gripe. I have a big gripe with no, and it's very random, but I think it's a necessity.
There was a time when no smartphone had a calculator. You had to download one and had crazy ads and stuff, and probably logging everything you're doing, but
That's exactly what the iPad is right now, to this day. Even the brand new educational iPad doesn't have a calculator. Another question, and this is kind of, this is going to be kind of it's going to open up a lot of things, but in general, can you sign into YouTube and Tails without anyone knowing your IP or traffic? It's kind of a very
the answer is no. You don't want to use Tails to sign in to any account because YouTube automatically logs your IP address. Now, they will have the IP address of the Tails, whatever IP address Tor gives you is what YouTube's going to have. But for that entire session, you are now completely de-anonymized. So do not log into any accounts like that when you're using Tails. And even what they recommend on their website for security is if you need to log into something like that, but then you need to do something else, they recommend you get in there, you do the stuff you need to log in, you log out, you shut down the computer, you reboot the computer, and then you proceed to the more security sensitive stuff. And that's actually something they address on their website to do.
Yeah, very, very well said. I recommend to my viewers, you can use Tor and start doing different sessions, but I'd recommend configuring a normal web browser like Firefox and properly configuring it in a way that your privacy and security aren't exposed too much, and using that for your personal life.
Yeah.
As your personal life.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead. Finish up.
And I would recommend tunneling all the other traffic that isn't part of a personal account through Tor for sessions, just like Tom said. Both things work.
Yeah. I think for general everyday computer use, though, what I do is I have a completely separate browser that's I use for YouTube, and I use that browser only gets used for YouTube, nothing else. Mm-hmm. And then you use other browsers for that. The only place that caused some issues is when Flash still existed because of this whole concept of super cookies, or sometimes called zombie cookies. Mm-hmm. And what would happen is nearly every site that would want to set one of these would call Flash, because the difference is the cache in Flash holds, I think 100 times more data than the cookies in a web browser does. Mm-hmm. And so what they would do is they would take the cookie, store it in Flash, and then any web browser could access Flash. And so they could share a session between your Firefox browser and your Chromium browser. They could share those through Flash. Mm-hmm. But now, since we're seeing the death of Flash, and really I think the final nail in the coffin of Flash is GDPR, when you can no longer do that kind of stuff without consent in EU, because Adobe's been calling for the end of Flash. And what is it, this year or next year or something is when it's officially going to be declared dead. Well, we need to stop using it altogether. And that's, the good news is that all these websites started to put in things to keep it turned off by default.
Mm-hmm. And on the topic of that, in order to avoid super cookies in general, that's why I recommend setting up a properly configured browser. Mm-hmm. And I want to make a video on that actually, but that includes using things like NoScript. And NoScript will not allow any scripts to run on websites. And yes, this will break many websites, but all you have to do is temporarily enable one if you absolutely need certain scripts to load on a website. That's a big misconception with NoScript. People think that NoScript breaks websites, and it does. but it does that by default to protect you. You can always enable scripts individually.
Yeah.
Think about no script.
Yeah. Kaimen says, I'm in my 3rd semester as an IT student, and the more I've learned about networking security, the more I'm looking into moving over to Linux. Came across this channel recently. Good stuff. All right. Well, also check out TechLore's channel there, Kaime. So, absolutely.
Let's see here.
Is it bad to use Tor on Windows if you do not use the dark web?
Oh, okay.
I have my own thoughts on that, but I'll let you answer first.
Okay. In general, if you're going for an anonymous session, you don't want to do that on Windows. Windows pretty much screws up the entire anonymous session for you. But, one, the dark web itself isn't... Let me quickly explain the dark web. The dark web isn't this mysterious place. Any site that ends in .onion that requires you to access... that requires Tor to access the website is considered what we call the dark web.
Now,
on my Discord server...
Correction. Isn't that deep web? There's a difference between deep web and dark web. So there's some difference. There's some issues in the definitions. Go ahead and clarify those for us then.
Yeah. So the deep web is any site that's not search indexed. So when you log into your personal email account, you're in the deep web because Google private session because it requires an account. When you log into Reddit, your personal Reddit account is the deep web. So people access the deep web every day, and it's a very misleading statistic when people say 70% of the internet's the deep web, because into is the deep web, and any type of private form that's not publicly indexed is the deep web.
Okay.
The dark web is a site accessed through Tor, and it ends in the .onion extension. Instead of .com, you're going to see .onion. And the dark web has lots of misconceptions behind it because it's not used for just illegal activities. There are sites that can only be loaded onto .onions that are used by activists around the world, blog posters, and there's many different use cases for these websites. So that's kind of the difference between the deep web, the dark web, and the misconceptions. On my Discord server, I just made a rule to use the word dark web in our Discord server because I think takes out of context what Tor is used for. So I've renamed it as the private web because that's what it's actually supposed to be used for. And I think that the dark web brings a lot of issues of people from caring about the privacy because they become scared of this mysterious thing, which isn't that mysterious.
Okay, good. Awesome. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, my comment is, in general, I am not an advocate of using a Tor bundle. If you want to use Tor, you want to use Unix, Cubes, or Tails. And the reason is definitely. The Tor bundle, which you can download to easily access an Onion site. If you just need to access an Onion site, but privacy is not your thing, go for it. Have at it. The problem is the Tor bundles, they will very frequently leak. They will have DNS leakage. And so it is possible to track what you're doing on that. And so if you need it just to access something on a .onion, just because what you need to access is on a dark onion, but privacy is no concern of yours, go ahead and do it. But I would not use a Tor bundle on any computer. I would use because Tails, Unix, and Cubes, they integrate that into every level of the operating system. It's not just a little surface thing. And on the bundle is a surface little thing. And if you execute some script, it can go outside the browser to work. And that's the biggest danger.
Definitely. And that's a great thing to bring up, that the Tor browser bundle isn't the same thing as that runs on the Tor network. Do you want to explain the difference between the Tor browser and the Tor network?
Yeah, I mean, the browser itself is just a browser configured to go onto the Tor network. The network itself it's called the Tor or the Onion. The reason it's a .onion is because it has 3 layers, 2 or 3 layers of encryption. You start with an entry node, and then everything from that is encrypted to a transitionary node, and then everything is re-encrypted again onto a third. So the entry node and the exit node cannot be viewed. Even if they could be viewed, it's encrypted differently, so you can't see the data that's being passed out. So that's the network. The browser just allows you to access that network. It's specifically configured for that network.
Looks like King Machiavelli has a question for both of us, but I'll ask you. What web browser do you use to browse the internet, YouTube, etc., and what security measures do you add to your browser?
Okay. For me, I am not an advocate of plugins or add-ons generally, just because there's too many shady ones. I mean, look at the ad block issue. There's
Definitely.
hundreds of them, and like two maybe aren't spyware. So I run a modified hosts file that has thousands and thousands of lines. It blocks bad websites on the internet. It blocks advertising networks. It blocks crypto miners. And anything else I don't want to have access, like Facebook. I have blocked Facebook on there so they can't track what I'm doing throughout the world. So that's what I do. My general purpose browser is either Firefox or WaterFox. It depends if I have time to to install WaterFox, because it's not in most repos other than Arch. And it can be a pain. So I just use Firefox. I'm not as keen on some of the things Mozilla's doing right now, but I certainly trust it more. The other browser I use a lot is Chromium, not Chrome, but Chromium, which is the open source Chrome. That's the base that Chrome develops on, and then they add their googly stuff and then let it go. So I use Chromium and Firefox. If I need a third, I either go with Midori or just something else in the repo. Usually I don't need to do that, but Firefox and Chromium usually.
Thanks. I personally use Firefox, and I do use plugins, but I only use plugins from open source projects by the EFF. So I use uBlock Origin, which is one of the more trusted ad blockers that doesn't have those problems. I use HTTPS Everywhere, something that everybody needs to use 100% in your system. Off the top of my head, it's hard for me to remember everything. NoScript is a great extension. Decentralize is something else that's really nice. Decentralize, guys. And you can also use user agent switchers as well, if that's something that you want, but you have to kind of utilize it in the proper way. And if you don't really know what it is, you probably shouldn't be using it in general.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I don't use them is, as a friend says, I'm overly cautious in a lot of things. I just don't want to rely on any extra plugins. That's one of the reasons I hate the GNOME desktop. The GNOME desktop has no functionality outside of plugins and extensions you install from other third-party sources. I don't want to be messing with all these other third-party sources. I want settings in my operating system. Simple Simon asks about Air VPN. What's your thought on Air VPN?
Air VPN's because they're a company that seems super genuine about protecting people's privacy, anonymity, and security, because they constantly donate to the Tor browser bundle. They give all the instructions on how to properly use their software, and they actually use open source software that's called the Eddy software. And the Eddy software runs on Linux, and you can actually import any OpenVPN profile into the Eddy software. So they're open to other VPNs utilizing their software for a simple to use client for beginners. And I think that's a great thing about them. And because me personally, it doesn't mean you should, but I personally trust them a lot. And even though they're in the 14 eyes, I still trust them with my data. And it's one of my most trusted providers. And they implement so many security measures, and they offer you, the user, so much customization in the connection if that's something that you're looking for. Speeds were not great, though, and they don't have the best server selection, and they're not the cheapest option, which is three things that you would normally find in a very high security service in general. Good service though.
This is a fascinating comment, not a question, but it's a good one worth mentioning. Keegan, the Tennessean, says, when I was younger, I'd sacrifice privacy for convenience. Now I'm 29 with 2 little boys to protect, so I happily sacrifice convenience for privacy. So what's your thought? I mean, I'm older than most people think. You're a pretty young guy. Do you sacrifice convenience for privacy or privacy for convenience?
Absolutely. Different, I don't want to say identities, but on YouTube, obviously, convenience all the way, because I'm trying to run a business and a brand here. But for my personal life, it has always been the number one thing. I'm that person is, talking talking at my bank and they're asking me for a verification code, and it's like, oh wait, I got to open up my password manager and then log into my email because I don't save my passwords automatically. And to access my email, I have to verify a new device, and then I have to verify a 2-step verification code or Google Authenticator code. So there's like 3 different things I got to get done, and they're just like, we just texted you a code to your email. It's not a big deal. Why can't you just open this up? But convenience is definitely sacrificed on my end, and things.
I mean, I hear that. I just changed banks. The bank I was using was becoming very anti-consumer. It was kind of hilarious when I closed the account down because they're like, why'd you close down your accounts, right? And I said, what, you guys are just doing things that I find very anti-consumer. I mean, the first thing is they dropped the ability to deposit other, non-bank checks into the checking accounts. That's because all my business accounts are in a different state. And, this is a business for me. Well, I mean, that's for my web design business. The business here is local stuff, but so they got rid of that, and then they very silently, without really announcing it, they got rid of the ability. You used to be able to deposit a check in the ATM and take out $100 immediately off of that check. Though they got rid of that so that instead you could pay a 3% fee and get all the money now, which, by the way, is 1 or 2% more expensive than Wally World charges to cash a check. And then every single time I go into the bank, they'd either call me on the phone or send me emails from some third party. How was your experience at our bank? Well, you're selling my data and you're a bank. So I went in and closed them down, and she's like, well, and I told them about this other one. It's like, you got rid of this ability to do this. I said, you never announced that. I said, I read every statement you guys have. Oh, well, we put it on our website and verbally communicated if you came in. No, you didn't. I was in the bank. You didn't verbally communicate that. And so I was like, okay, so this is a bank that's selling my third party, annoying the bejeebers out of me just because I walk into the branch to do business. But they don't have that same thing to tell me when they do something that's very anti-consumer. They just think, oh, on the website is good enough. So I'm like, you know what? I'm done with you guys. So I closed that bank. Well, you open another bank account first, and then you close the old one. So I open a new bank account, and wouldn't you know it, you go onto the online, they absolutely want a phone number. Like, no. So I emailed the bank president. I said, if you'd like me to keep this account I just opened, you're going to bypass that. And he did. I might be the only person there that does not have a phone number linked to their online account because it's not secure, people. It's not secure.
Definitely. I recently also closed a bank account because they didn't offer a 2-step verification that didn't rely on SMS.
Yep.
So they required SMS verification, which, as we all know, isn't secure, and people can very easily gain access to your phone number and then start forwarding device. So I closed that bank and went with another bank that offered actual proper 2-factor authentication and offered many different options. Mm-hmm. Privacy, like the whole privacy and conveniency argument is, well, privacy and security are opposite to convenience. The less convenient your life gets. It's just like if you get a bike lock. If you get a bike lock, now you locking it up. It takes time to lock up your bike. You have to hold on to the key. If you lose the key, your life's a living mess. Your bike. And you can quickly get on it and quickly go, and you don't have to worry about anything. But there's a high risk of someone getting your bike and getting your information in a digital sense. But I like to look at privacy as an investment. If I care about my privacy and I never give up as much as I can, I'm never going to have to worry about identity theft. I'm never going to have to worry about, oh, someone hacked into my bank account or my email. Mm-hmm. And if you do have to deal with that, then your convenience is thrown out the table anyway. Someone got all your information, they stole your money, or whatever they did.
Yeah, that's the thing, and we are so giving out too much info, and that's a problem. Definitely. It really is. World of Linux. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. We can both talk about this. What security measures do we take when at the airport/border, and would you ever give your real phone number on any online account?
Okay. this is one of those cases where Google has a really interesting, neat thing, and that is that they have this thing called Google Voice. Google Voice is where you can put in a phone number, and you can attach that phone number to a cell phone, or you cannot. You can literally use it as a call relay. I could log into my Google Voice account and attach my headphones and my microphone, and I could call you from my computer, and it comes from that Google Voice number. Okay. If somebody calls it, if they leave a message, they will email me an MP3 file and a transcription of the message. If they text it, they will send me an email of the text. So it gives me a very good way to keep that secure. And if I'm gets attacked by a spammer, it's very easy to block numbers over there. And at the same time, if it gets too annoying, I can just redirect the email over to my spam account and not have to deal with it. So that's like if you look up my business, my business is Western Mountain Web Design. If you look it up, there's a phone number listed. That phone number is a Google relay. And if you call that number during normal business hours, it actually rings my phone. So I can talk through that. You're calling a different number than my phone is, but it makes sure that my phone stays private. And then if I want to call you back, I can actually go in there and take call back. It will call my phone first and then connect the call through you. But then after normal business hours, you get voicemail, because I'm not messing with somebody trying to call at 3 a.m. But it allows you to have a public phone number on your website without having that. So that is the number that gets given out. If I deem a phone number necessary for something, that's the number that gets given out.
Very cool. For me personally, the big thing that I'm most concerned about when I'm going through an airport or a border and whatnot, so he kind of talked about his real phone numbers on online accounts. The other part of the question was airports and borders, and the main thing that comes to mind is biometric passwords, borders, because there's different legal rules out there when you're crossing a border or you're at an airport where police or law enforcement can actually force you to unlock your devices and search your devices if you're using a biometric password. And the reason for this is because our laws are outdated in at least the United States, where word isn't considered information, and the Constitution only protects you from handing out information. So if you have a physical password on a device, you have no right. Well, they can't force you to give up your password. Fingerprint, though, they can force you to unlock the device using your fingerprint. And that is a big concern, and that's actually happened a lot. And it's one of the reasons that Apple recently introduced the quick, if you quickly tap the power button 5 times, it'll automatically require Touch ID. Password to bypass Touch ID. So that if you are in a scenario where law enforcement wants to access the device, you can quickly turn that off.
Yeah.
When I think of it. So when you are about to cross the border or you're going to an airport, I always turn off my fingerprint sensors, and I require a physical password. Because that's something that you should be concerned about.
I have a Nexus 5X. It has a fingerprint reader. It is not set up. It is okay.
Not set up either.
I mean, really. Let's see. I'm in, and I missed a button. I mean, that took me 2 seconds longer than it should have. I mean, we don't need to save 2 seconds on that.
Yeah.
We don't.
And speaking of the 5X, because I have the 6P, you have Lineage installed as well, right?
I have Lineage, yes.
What do you think of it? Do you like it?
I do. I ran Lineage when I first got the phone, and then I switched over to Copperhead for about a month. There were some issues I had with Copperhead, so I went back to Lineage. The core things are, there was a problem on Copperhead where I could not record with an external microphone, and that's important because I do record a lot of my videos with the external microphone. A lot of my videos are recorded with the phone outside. So that was important. But the biggest thing for me, honestly, was Lineage allows you to modify the system files through Android Debug Bridge. And that means that I can push my very good host file directly to my phone without rooting the phone. So I'm getting the protection of a custom host file without without having to root the phone. And that is key because I use so much less data and the phone is so much more secure because I know Facebook's not tracking everything I'm doing and all the ad networks are not tracking what I'm doing and all that kind of stuff. So I love the Lineage phone. I don't like what the company does sometimes, but as far as give and take, Lineage is about perfect for me.
Nice. I don't know if you heard the news about Copperhead. I believe the founder of Copperhead has discontinued the project, and it's now considered a sketchy project. It's a big no, so to stay away from Copperhead.
So what happened is there was the CEO or director, whoever it is. I've talked to him before. We had some communications, and he's a nice guy, but he is apparently very very into the money, and that's really what hurt their project. Is that they've always done a lot of things. If you were trying to teach people how to do stuff, or installing, if you were to install Pixel, install the Pixel version on somebody else's phone, they'd have a big deal about that, things like that. Well, what happened is there's only one guy who did all the development. I think it was Daniel, is his name, and he was a brilliant Android security guy. Well, they had, I guess, enough discussions, and eventually the CEO or whatever kicked him out. And so he deleted everything, including the signing keys. And so with the signing keys gone, no more updates. So Copperhead, yes, is officially a dead project. As of right now, all of their code is disappeared. You can't get to it anymore on their page. If you go to their webpage and go to source code, it's not there. You can still download the 6P and the Nexus 5X images, but that's all you can get right now.
Damn. That's too bad, because the two main options were Copperhead and Lineage. So now we're kind of down to the last option.
Well, actually, there is another one that is actually endorsed by the Free Software Foundation. And there's a couple other ones. And actually, those guys reached out to Daniel and said, we'd love it if you'd come work for us. So we'll see what happens.
Definitely. Also, the Purism phone, Librem 5, is set to release somewhat soon, so that's exciting to see.
Yeah, that's.
What are your thoughts on?
Should be like January, like 6 or 8 months or so. I will not be an early adopter, but it is an awesome project, and the reason is I just don't buy phones new, and it's very expensive. So, if they sent me one, I'd gladly review it, use it, switch on my account, and give a full review of it. One of the great things about that project, one of the awesome things, is that it actually brought 3 separate teams together. Because of course the phone, that company there was building the phone on GNOME. Well, the Ubuntu phone crashed and burned, but the project was picked up by UB Ports. So UB Ports joined in with Purism, and they're now working on the phone with them. So you will have the option of GNOME and Ubuntu. But then the KDE team joined in with them with Plasma Mobile. And so giving you the KDE option. So the Librem phone will come out with 3 different desktop environments you can run on the thing, but they are pooling the resources of all 3 groups to make sure they have a good product. So this is an awesome thing in the Linux world.
Very cool.
And you have 3 separate teams.
And it runs on Linux. It's a full Linux distribution that runs on a mobile device, and that's pretty unique. What happened with the Ubuntu phone project?
Well, Shuttleworth did a lot of changes in Ubuntu. It's like, and he had made some announcements last year that he wanted to bring, of course, the company's canonicals behind Ubuntu. He wanted to bring it and possibly look at an IPO, not this year, but maybe going into the future years. He talked openly about this. But what they decided to do is they wanted to drop the Unity project, which basically meant Ubuntu went back to GNOME. And then he wanted to... he dropped the Unity, and then they also dropped the phone at the same time. And this was right when they were on the verge of pushing out Unity 8. They're making a big deal about Unity 8. And I did the first big video that actually got me enough views to grow the channel from the initial infantile stage, was actually a video criticizing Ubuntu, saying, I don't think this is going to be ready in 3 or 4 months. And indeed it wasn't. It was still a neat concept, but they dropped Unity right then. And then they went back to GNOME, and they basically diverted all of their resources into server and IoT. And that's what has a lot of people really scared, because guess what? Those are the exact lines Microsoft is investing in right now. Server and IoT. And so that's raising a couple eyebrows going, they want to do an IPO. I wonder if Microsoft's looking at all of this.
Yeah, that is scary.
We'll have to see. World of Linux, should we say GNU Linux or just Linux?
Speaking of Microsoft, what about GitHub?
Yeah. Mass exodus to GitLab?
The thing with one thing about the GitHub thing with Microsoft is that people seem to think that GitHub was always open source. And that
you got an ugly scammer on your chat line. You want to kick that one out? Find that girl for that fun night.
I just reported it, and
okay, good.
Should go away. But
there's
GitHub's never been.
I still see one there.
I guess when I report it, it doesn't actually.
Oh, really?
I just need to ban that person.
I thought it did.
GitHub has always been closed source. It's never been an open source project. It's where lots of open source projects are hosted on an open source project. So I think that's a big misconception. And I think that I think it's GitLab is what people should be using if they want the open source variant of GitHub. So yeah, if you want to avoid Microsoft, that's the way to go. Let me see.
Okay. I have a body tube here. This is maybe a concern one. I don't know if you can address this or not. Oh,
okay.
I lost it. Where'd you go? I hate the YouTube. It needs to fix the comment thing. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Just arrived 5 minutes ago. Okay. 1 year ago, I bought 2 years of NordVPN. It keeps disconnecting and closing apps. I set it to close on drop, gave up on it dropping too much, got Proton VPN a week ago, flawless. So apparently Nord is having an issue with that.
Yeah, and I mean, every VPN service is going to work differently for different people. I mean, there's countless different devices, there's countless different locations, and there's countless different configurations. So I test all my VPNs on everything's the same. So I look at the same exact things, I test on the same exact devices so that there's no possible, but there's always configurations that don't work for people. I've had people say that some VPNs I tested didn't work well out of, for example, Sweden. Maybe a certain VPN doesn't work well out of Sweden. None of their servers connect very well. In that case, that VPN doesn't work well for a person out of Sweden. So what I always recommend to make sure that the VPN actually works for you is to instantly try it out, try it on all of your devices right when you buy it. And then if there's any problem, you reach out to their support team ASAP. And if they don't resolve it, then you request a refund. Nord has a 30-day money-back policy. So if you talk to their support team, even if you talk to the support team and it takes them over 30 days and it still doesn't get resolved, they will still refund you, or at least they should. But if you found something that works for you, like Proton, then stick with it because clearly that's what's working for you.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I can't test VPN services on so many different configurations.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Okay, Political Monkey says, I know Proton VPN hides DNS and runs through Tor. That's interesting.
That is one. They offer servers that run through Tor, so not every server
not
on
all
Proton.
of them do. Okay.
It's the same thing. Nord has their, I think it's called Onion servers or Tor servers, where they do also tunnel it through Tor network as well. Although if you actually want true anonymity, you shouldn't be using either of those. You should be using the actual Tor network, since those aren't as private and secure as using the actual Tor network.
Yeah. Okay. When the government runs a Tor exit nodes, does that make Tor not, or does that make it less trustworthy? What's your thoughts on that?
Can you repeat that one?
When the government runs Tor exit nodes, does that not make it less trustworthy?
And that really starts going, because this is a question that no one can really answer. No one knows whether or not how many exit nodes are compromised. We know that there are some compromised Tor nodes because...
And there's lists of them, actually.
And there's been hackers that have been caught because of these compromised Tor nodes. So, although I wouldn't say that every Tor node is compromised, and there's still lots of Tor nodes out there. That doesn't take away from the project.
Yeah.
So yes, if there is a government-run Tor node, I would typically be a little bit more cautious about it. But that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it necessarily, because keep in mind there are people that work for the government, like people in the military, who do utilize Tor, and they absolutely need Tor to survive. And the government wants them to survive. So that's why the government is one of the people that backs Tor, because it's a project that they need to use as well. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as seeing the data that you're doing, like if it's okay, I guess there's two types of compromise. Now he is saying government run Tor exit nodes. There's a difference between that and a compromised Tor exit node.
Got it.
So a government run exit node, of course, maybe we just would assume they're looking at some type of traffic, but for anybody to be able to see exactly what you're doing on Tor, you have to own both the entry and the exit node. The same party has to control both of those and be able to monitor the traffic through them. So it does decrease the odds of that, particularly since usually the nodes are in completely different jurisdictions. And so you have that issue. And but they could probably identify who's using something, but really the people who have been unmasked using Tor, it wasn't the Tor nodes that unmasked them. It was they passed a file, or they passed something through, like a flash file or whatever, and that's the case. I saw a note. There's a spammer in mine now.
Yeah, someone said that on mine. That there's a spammer on yours.
Mark, you are a mod. Keegan, you are a mod. If you guys can take that. DistroTube, you're here too. You can be a mod. All right, I added 3 mods to my channel, so you guys find them and hunt them out. Thanks. Seek and destroy.
Oh, there she is.
I gotta find where I was now.
Okay, let me see if I can add.
3 plus 3.
IPVanish scares me because if they keep logs, I bet a lot of other VPNs do too. IPVanish real quick, especially for people who use IPVanish. IPVanish was recently exposed that in, I think, 2016, there was a case that someone used IPVanish, and they actually requested IPVanish to start keeping logs, and they did do it, and they reported all the logs of this person's web traffic. And IPVanish is a company that claims they don't use logs. Now, this is obviously unfortunate because this is one of those cases where a VPN in the 14 eyes was, in a sense, compromised. Even though it wasn't a gag order necessarily, it was a court order that required them to do it. So it was almost a gag order, even though it wasn't technically a gag order. Eyes can be a problem, and it's sad to see IPVanish do that. I've reached out to the IPVanish team to ask for their thoughts. They've been not good in general. They say that what IPVanish says is that they were under a different company. They were owned by a different company than that was running the servers, and they weren't implementing proper security and privacy measures. But now they have a different company that doesn't do that anymore. But I still, they haven't given me enough assurance that they do that. It was a quick 3-sentence response to my concerns about it, and that was it. So as of right now, I would definitely not trust IPVanish if privacy is what you're looking for. And since IPVanish has scored over 4 stars or higher on my channel, I was part of the affiliation program. Email from the affiliation program, because they do that sometimes, saying that the company that previously owned IPVanish, let's call it Company X, for the new IPVanish said, should Company X be more transparent about their VPN providers because they currently own other VPN services? So pretty much IPVanish now is pointing fingers at the company that previously owned them. Concerned because they should be trying to fix their own image right now, and they're saying that this other company has bad image problems. And I think that that's really bad, the way I see it. So, and from someone who works with them one-on-one and has talked to them beforehand and has tried to talk to their team, I would be very concerned if I were you. That's all I would say about that. There's people are saying there's a spammer.
Yeah, I got him. Thanks. Oh, is there another one?
Wait, there's dating for adults. See my profile.
Well, yeah, that's the spammer. Yeah.
Oh,
yes, Anthony. Yes, Anthony, you are a mod now. Anthony keeps spotting him on mine, but the problem is I'm like way up there, and I'm just trying to catch all these, and so I'm not seeing them. So yeah, Anthony's a mod now over here.
Well, I mean, let's not be too quick. I mean, she looks kind of cute in the profile picture.
Well, this is true. I mean, did you follow the Facebook experiment I did?
I did not.
That was exciting. I didn't do a lot of videos on it, and I didn't even do a official best full wrap up. But I went on it, but picked up a burner phone, and then I created a spoof Facebook account, and I literally did all the how many posts, how many likes, how many whatever I would do by rolling dice. Whole D&D, 1d8, 1d6, 1d4, whatever. Determine, am I going to like it? Am I going to not like it? Whatever else. Well, I had to end the experiment only 10 days in because the thing just became overrun by porn. And that's the reality of where Facebook is. Now, I'm not saying every Facebook account degenerates into that, but we give 13-year-old kids that kind of stuff. And the reality is most of them will use it right, but the fact that it's so easy to access is the challenge. So that's kind of the case.
I wanted to do a Facebook experiment too, but I wanted to experiment the rumors on microphone tapping and whether or not they actually do listen to the microphone.
That's exactly what my experiment was. And my take is they don't. That's my thought. And I had a whole scientific protocol for it. And like I said, I maintained it for quite a while. And I will say this is potentially the case. Probably the first conversation we allowed the phone to hear did have things related to that in the conversation. And so it's possible, but I think it's just the random friends that it'll automatically say, oh, you might know this person, you might know this person. And since I just rolled the dice, that's what I did.
Interesting. I'd like to test that as well. And I want to see because I was thinking of doing it in a sense of, I create everything as a burner account. A new phone, never touched before.
Yep.
I never have it connect to notification services and never log in with Google. All I do is talk into the mic. Is that what you did?
Yes. So, well, what you do first is I established a baseline. I established a baseline by giving the phone 10 days with no sound at all. I kept it isolated in a separate room, turned on, so it might have heard something ambient, but it didn't otherwise hear anything. And then I took 10 days worth of data to see. I think I stopped it for like 6 or 7 because it was so consistent. And then what I did is then I was going to expose it to 2 or 3 conversations a day for about 35, 40 minutes. So then I talked to it. Of course, location services was turned off. It was a burner phone. I just opened it up out of the package. It had 1 month's worth of data, 1 month's worth of call, 1 month's worth of whatever. Now, the potential bias is I started rolling to allow friends around the time that I had done that. So it was an error I did. So you want to fix that in the protocol. The problem that I ran into, though, is that eventually it'll repeat the same posts over and over and over, and then it stops showing you anything until you add friends. Well, who do you add? Do you add real people, or do you add the people that, and this is the concern with Facebook, is Facebook recommends all these people to you. Well, all these people they were recommending to me, all of them were porn. It was all porn, every bit of it. And so what my goal was supposed to see is does it listen to the microphone? And I think it does not. I did not notice any change in the advertising after subjecting it to conversations. It's just it just degenerated into nothing but porn. So why, And so that's kind of where I am.
I've got a question for you from Eric Defoe. Do you
Okay.
have to learn to code to use Linux?
No. Um, that's one of those misnomers. You will do better in Linux if you take the time to learn some terminal commands. Like when I install packages now, like applications and things, I do it through the terminal because it's faster. But no, you don't. And that's why it depends on the distro. I recommend people starting out, you want to use Linux Mint Cinnamon, particularly if you're coming from a Windows environment, because it feels so much like Windows and it is so well built, you don't need to touch the code. Linux Lite, MX Linux, Peppermint all do the same thing. Never really have to go into code in any of those distros. Manjaro's not bad. Manjaro's the only one from the Arch family I would try, but even that's it's questionable. But it's not bad. So no, you don't need to learn how to code to do Linux. It helps to get into Linux and learn some because you're going to work a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, and you're right. It is much more efficient to learn a terminal and start doing things in a terminal because there's lots of things that aren't offered in the settings that you actually have to configure yourself. And the nice thing is, it's a search away. It's a DuckDuckGo search away. You can just look up how to do something and someone will give you the command. So you don't really need to learn it. You just need to know how to use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beginner.
Very good. And that raises another question. So you use DuckDuckGo primarily, right?
I'm trying to switch to start page, but yes, right now DuckDuckGo.
Okay. I use start page rather than DuckDuckGo. What's your reason for using DuckDuckGo, and why are you thinking of start page?
Well, for me, DuckDuckGo is it's a much better alternative than using most search engines, but there is still some proprietary software that's inside of DuckDuckGo, and also they're based in the US, which could spark some concern. So I'm trying to avoid DuckDuckGo for that reason.
Okay.
But Start Page acts as a proxy, and it gives you better results. To be honest, the only thing I don't like about Start Page is its UI, because it feels like I'm using a search engine from 2005.
Really? I'm like the opposite. I did not use DuckDuckGo because I could not stand the UI at all, and Start Page was exactly what I wanted. Yeah, but I'm older than you. I'm used to search engines from 2005. So
interesting. I just love the modern UI to DuckDuckGo because it feels like I'm using something that matches like my operating system feel.
I can understand that, but and understand too. They've come a long way in the last year or so. But it was so hard to read what you were looking at a year ago. It's easier now. But yeah, I use Start Page, and I don't have a reason not to. And they're based in Norway, I believe, right?
Norway? Start Page?
Norway?
That sounds familiar. I want to say Norway, yes.
I think it's King Machiavelli says, how do you protect yourself from the NSA, and do you use your fingerprint scanner on your phone?
That is a loaded question, my friend.
Yes, it is.
That is something that no one video can answer.
Yeah.
Or
I'll say this.
Very quickly.
You can take some steps to not get as tangled in the NSA's dragnet. But when the NSA wants to find you, there is no escape. Unless, of course, you hung up in a hotel in Russia. And do I use the fingerprint scanner on my phone? No, I do not. It has never been set up, and I have no intention to set it up.
Pretty much, if you're asking the question of how to get away from the NSA, you're not a person who's going to be able to get away from the NSA.
Yes.
The only people that are able to do so are definitely know exactly what they're doing, and even they get caught pretty frequently for doing. Mostly, it's done for illegal reasons.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case.
And for me, I'm not. I mean, I don't think I'm doing anything that's that exciting to the NSA. But at the same token, I'm not going to go swimming where I know their dragnets are at.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, is we just need to make sure that which means that I'm not utilizing a lot of services. I don't stay logged in anything. Here's another tip. This was a change that Google made, I don't know, about 18 months ago. When you log into Google now on a browser, the automatic default is to completely save your login and not give you the options to log out, not give you the option. So if you do need to log into a Google account, you always use a private window to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to make sure you don't stay logged in. And I have to do that a lot because of working with clients' Google accounts and things like that. So I'm just in the habit. Other than my YouTube account, which is Chromium, on a completely different computer, like my main work computer, it does not log into Google at all, except for private windows for short periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you do. You just avoid the dragnets. You get off of Facebook. You don't have big social media accounts. You don't do a lot of public things, and that's kind of what you do. But that's what we should all be doing anyway.
Yeah. King Machiavelli asks, do you put tape on your phone's camera?
Sometimes. The iPhone I did. The Nexus, I mean, I'm running Lineage. I probably should, but not right now. It's something I've done, and the reason I don't is because it comes so inconvenient. It falls off way too easy, and so for me, I should. I've done it in the past. I didn't care quite as much with this, but the one thing, if you're going to be that paranoid, you also need to figure out microphone technology.
Yeah.
Which could just simply be a microphone plug. Because if you plug, of course, that means, if you don't have a headphone jack, you have a different problem. But if you still got the headphone jack, if you plug in a headphone, take an old pair of headphones that's broken, just clip off the end of the wires, plug that thing in the end, and it should disable all your mics and stuff. So, yeah, I should, but I don't.
Yeah. They do have, on Amazon or any other service you want to buy them from, they do have things that make them easier. You just attach them, and you can actually just slide them over the camera. So you can just slide it off, and it opens up the camera. More professional solutions for people that don't want to use tape.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it can stay there forever, and it's also very convenient because you can quickly just...
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the mic is typically something that's very overlooked, and there's not much you can do about a mic.
Mm-hmm. And this is funny too. In my Facebook experiment, I found out there is perilously little you can do about the mic. I couldn't tape it. I couldn't
take
block
it out physically.
You could take it out physically. That was about it. So I ended up wrapping the thing in multiple layers of blankets and putting it in a box in another room. That's what I did to keep it.
That's pretty funny. Like a whole janky solution. Yeah. That's the great way. Put it in like a fridge, from like an old fridge. You just leave it.
Yeah. Well,
in a desert.
I mean, I needed to make sure one of the conditions was that you still needed to let it have access to its network. So I couldn't put it in a Faraday box or something like that, which would have been the better solution, but I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. So John Oxley asks, what's a good privacy distro that's easy to learn?
I think it's not the distro as much as it is the habits you use your computer for. I can be a lot more private on Mint than somebody that has poor, sloppy computer skills can be on Tails. And that's really the thing. So, Tails is not hard to learn. It's a different desktop environment than you might be used to if you're used to a Windows environment. But it's not bad. I mean, I don't think that the challenge, and the reason I don't do as many distro reviews as I used to, is they just run together at some point in time. It gets to the point it's just like, okay, they have a different version of Qt, and the desktop environment's different, and that's about it. And has a different manager, so they're all about the same. What you want to do though is if you're going into like the field of activism or whatever else, you want to learn how to use things like Onion Share, which is a self-destructing sharing protocol. You want to learn how to use... Does Tormail still exist? I don't remember.
I don't believe so. I haven't heard about it much. So I don't
Proton
think so.
Mail. I mean, it's more habits you want to learn. It's some of the technologies you want to learn. But the Tails is probably your best because it has a lot of that stuff built in automatically. Like Onion Share is now built right into Tails and things like that. So. Here's something you raised up earlier. Do you use Amazon?
I do use Amazon. I think it's one of the most convenient ways to shop, and I think that most of us do use Amazon. Also, as a creator, Amazon affiliate is how I make, a good amount of my money.
Do you do any privacy type stuff?
What do you mean?
Okay. Did you know Amazon, probably from two different teams working, you can use Amazon anonymously?
I could see how you might be able to, but like, what kind of strings do you have to? Like,
Very
what kind
few.
of stuff do you have to do to get that to work?
Very few. One problem they were trying to solve is how do we sell our products to unbanked people? So their gift cards are now refillable with cash. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, I know the city you're in. I don't know if that's public, so I'm not going to say it. And because I have a friend who lives in your city, we were looking this up. About every third block, there's a pickup location in your city. Mm-hmm. So what you do is, since you have all this access to VPNs, I do it through Tor. What you do is you create an Amazon account, which Amazon only needs a name and an email address. So I created a separate email address, a separate service, and I used Tor to access it. You use the cash gift cards, which you pay cash at any of the locations here where I'm at, CVS and Sheetz, where you're at, different stores. So you pay cash with that. You take the gift card, link that to your account, and then you place the order and you ship it to a pickup location.
Nice.
Pickup
I need
locations.
to look into that.
Yeah, pickup location's just going to ask you. Literally, it's a code, and what I do is it's like a Black Ops operation for me, because when the thing gets there, I memorize the code before I go in. They'll give you a code and a locker. I memorize the code before you go in. You go on in, Black Ops operation, throw on your trench coat, throw on your black hat, your black ski mask, you run on in there, you run over to the locker, hit the PIN number, open the thing out, and run out of the store real fast. Now, you don't do that because that just raises too many flags. But, you casually walk in, you go to the locker, you enter your code, you grab your box, and you leave. So
nice.
That is a way, and that's why I like Amazon, and I use Amazon a lot because I'm also a writer. I publish my books through CreateSpace because it's not that it's cheapest to produce, it's that they give me more commission than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so I use Amazon a lot, but I use it privately.
I didn't know about any of that, so that's really cool to hear.
Look into it. And I know what city you're in. I know it can be done. Because I was talking to a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely something I'm going to look into. I'll actually make a note.
Yeah. And so I created a separate Amazon account because you look back over the history. I think I have books in this house that Jeff Bezos himself have packed and shipped. I've had an Amazon account since the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It's staggering the amount of stuff that they know and they collect, But it's a company that, and it's not that I go there because of the convenience as much. It's that there's a lot of things I buy there I simply can't buy anywhere else, at least not without driving 200 miles to get to. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing.
Someone here mentioned, I have problems using Amazon when I'm using a VPN. Nothing loads on the site or the app. And I do want to address that. Block VPN servers. Yeah, they deny this until, they die.
I actually did my first Amazon order using this method on Pure VPN.
Mm-hmm. So lots of VPNs do work. And Amazon does block some servers, though. And I use NordVPN. If I connect to most US servers, a lot of US servers on NordVPN don't connect to Amazon. And it's not like NordVPN doesn't want you to use Amazon. They don't throttle anything type of traffic. It's Amazon that blocks their servers for whatever reason. And actually, if you connect to a Canadian server, everything works fine. And if you ask Amazon about it, they'll tell you they don't censor any of the servers that you can access it from. But I would definitely trust the smaller VPN companies who are trying to uncensor traffic over a company like Amazon.
And if you can't do it there, Amazon works just fine on Tor. As long as here I'm on Tor, so I'm actually accessing this with Tor on my phone. So this is what I use to use my anonymous account. I just log in with Tor.
Eric Defoe says, "Mate, I'm still afraid of going to Linux because of just the console commands." And about Switch to Linux's channel because he talks a lot about, migrating over to Linux, and I'm sure you can kind of respond to that and the fears that Eric Defoe has about Linux.
Well, that's why I use Linux Mint, because it's like you don't need to touch the terminal. Very, very, very few things you need to. And then I would encourage you to pick yourself up a little USB key. And this is the power of Linux. So for the people watching, there's that for you. There you go. Little USB key. This is a 32 gigabyte. This is an entire Debian install. I think it's Debian. It's either Debian or it's Linux Mint Budgie. I forget. So two of them and they look the same. You can install an entire distro on that. You can boot your computer up. You can play with it. You can tinker with it. Anything you do on that, it's going to be saved. It's a full operating system. Get on there. Play with it, tinker with it, and then when you're comfortable, you're like, so you won't be able to see it, but the guys, if you're watching this on my channel, here's my desktop view. Okay, so my desktop view, I have it set up just like a Windows computer. I have my taskbar at the bottom. I have all my stuff on there. Here is my menu. I have all my applications. I can install applications with a simple installer here without having to worry about downloading spam from the internet. I mean, advanced settings, configurations right here, all in the GUI. No terminal needed to run Linux Mint. So jump over there, try Linux Mint out. And then when you get used to that, when you're like, okay, I'm a little comfortable, find some simple tutorials. I think DistroTube was doing some recently on Linux commands. Find some of those. And just try your best to follow along on your little USB key, because if you kill it, just reinstall it. Mm-hmm. So don't let that shy you away, because Linux is truly powerful, and the days of needing the terminal are long gone. They're not needed anymore.
Very well said. You really don't need terminal anymore to use Linux, and the Live OS is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. This one kind of goes back to a previous conversation, Start Page versus DuckDuckGo. BodyTube says, Start Page is Google-based, so I use DuckDuckGo. What's your comments on that?
It is not... To say it's Google-based isn't technically correct. All Start Page does is it takes Google results and it gives it to you through their service. So pretty much, think of it like you're in a classroom and there's someone you like. You have a crush on someone, but you don't want to tell them. Or someone you know, to go talk to that person and say that somebody... So now this person, the person that you like, knows the information. They know that somebody likes them, but they don't know... It's very similar to start Page in Google. So, handed to someone, but Google doesn't know who the results are going to, because it's all coming from the centralized server. Start Page controls all that. Google result, and it serves it to you, just like it serves it to everybody else. So Start Page handles the privacy. That I don't know if that made much sense, right? I just described it in a good way.
Yeah, and I thought that was good. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It's not using Google as much as it's filtering. It's a big firewall preventing Google from seeing you, but it's letting the Google results.
Exactly.
Okay. Steve says we need physical kill switches for everything: mic, webcam, Wi-Fi, etc. And the Librem 5 phone has that.
Yes, I cannot wait. That's my next phone, 100%. I'm probably going to pre-order it pretty soon.
Okay. I have two here from King Machiavelli. Would you use Bluetooth for music? I'm guessing Bluetooth.
I would avoid Bluetooth.
Yeah.
I would avoid Bluetooth at all costs. Bluetooth is by default insecure. It's such an unsecure protocol. The more that you leave Bluetooth on, the more that you're leaving yourself exposed to security exploits. To combat this, only enable Bluetooth when you're using the Bluetooth function on your device, and also make sure you're using the most up-to-date software, because a lot of exploits through Bluetooth can be fixed with updates.
Yeah, in fact, there was that smart lock that came out. It's like a fingerprint smart lock. For some reason, they have a Bluetooth connector. It took a security firm 45 minutes to hack it. With Bluetooth. It was Bluetooth.
Yeah, Bluetooth is inherently insecure, so avoid it at all costs if possible.
Yeah, and that's my gripe with the new Raspberry Pis is they're like, oh, our new Raspberry Pis, we have built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Can I please get it without? I don't want my Raspberry Pi to have Bluetooth on it. I'm capable of plugging in a Bluetooth adapter if I need Bluetooth. And another one, King Machiavelli. Do you use Signal when making personal phone calls? And is there a reason to use a cheap Walmart burner phone? I don't use Signal because I just don't want to give anybody my phone number that I don't have to.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to use your personal phone number to register on Signal. You can actually use any phone number. They don't really care. It doesn't have to be like a fully personal verified phone number. But it is definitely a problem, and I really hope that Signal does implement an email feature down the line. That's my hopes for the project.
That because I have all of these crazy phone numbers in my Google accounts that I could use one of those. Now,
you can just use any random number.
So then, is it kind of like how we set up Telegram, where you basically use a username?
That's why Signal isn't as nice as Telegram in some ways. Telegram, you can add people by username. Mm-hmm. Signal is, as far as I know, only phone number based. So you have to type in someone's phone number to add them as a contact, meaning that you're not really anonymous to someone else because someone.
So effectively, then I would need to use the phone number that I want to use it on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But Signal, for the people I know, because they have my phone number anyway. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I'm very thankful every day that the 3 people I text the most every day, I was able to get them all to switch over, and now everyone uses Signal. But for people that I don't personally know, I like using Telegram because Telegram, I can just give them a username, and then we can all talk on Telegram.
Yeah,
and so there's definitely pros and cons.
Yeah, that seems okay to me too. So, okay. Do you use? Okay, the other part of the question is: there any reason to use a cheap Walmart burner phone?
It's gonna be. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead. I'm thinking about my answer.
It's definitely on a use case. I mean, in general, it's not realistic to be using a burner phone, and also burner phones can be tracked, and stuff like that. So burner phones aren't foolproof, first off, and are not instantly an anonymous form of. It's not an anonymous cellular device just because you got it as a burner phone. However, if there's something that you want to do that you think maybe you need to make a very private phone call for an activist purpose, you're trying to spread good information, you don't want anyone to find out in an anonymous way, which by the way isn't the default way of getting a burner phone, is a good way to go. But if you're asking the question, you probably don't need a burner phone.
Yeah. And that's the thing. No. Like I think the burner phone's just better for the lower cost and someone who doesn't need as much. The reason I personally don't use a burner phone is I'm a very unusual cell phone user. I use this to check email. I use it to share my Wi-Fi. I share it to do text messages and that. I have surprisingly few apps on this thing. And I kind of keep it that way. And what I found is that the burner phones, they just don't have as good of signal. They don't have as good of data. So like this phone here, this Nexus, I can connect this up to my computer with a hotspot and I can get 70 Mbps, 70 down. And I forget what up, but 70 down. That's insane because it's, it's a good system.
It is. Someone's asking, are biometrics completely secure? Can fingerprints, iris scanners, etc. be defeated? And the question was by Matt Thompson.
They are very easy to defeat. You can literally take a fingerprint with a piece of tape. You can put that onto a gummy frog and bypass it.
Yeah.
That's how easy a fingerprint is.
And I think Apple claimed that their Touch ID was, impenetrable when it first came out. And I think within the week that it came out, I want to say German team was able to crack it or something like that. And Touch ID ever since then has been known to be completely insecure. Actually, a simple picture of someone's fingerprint for someone to get into their phone. Mm-hmm. And also there's different issues too. Like there's the recent story about the person who died, and the police tried to raid the funeral to try to get the person's body and unlock their device. With biometrics, as well as the legal problems when you're trying to cross borders and airports and stuff like that. In general, biometrics are not a good way to go. ID is another problem. Face ID works on twins. Face ID has worked with pictures.
It's also Face ID's worked also with parents and children.
Yeah, that it's not a great system. As much as Apple likes to claim it's the new secure way to go, it really isn't. Passwords are still king when it comes to that.
If I could go grab my tinfoil hat for a little bit, for me, it's that I just think it's just a way to collect all the stuff. And I know they say they don't transmit the data, everything stays on the phone, but I'm not sure I want to believe that.
Yeah, and about privacy and security. They try to come across as a private and secure company, and to be fair, they are better than many of them out there. Still had its share of security problems. Everyone knows about the nudes that were leaked from the iCloud accounts. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that there's been lots of different hacks related to Apple. They do have to collect data, and they recommend things to you on your device. Somehow, Apple still has to get that information in some way, shape, or form and recommend you things, that information. So clearly it has to get to Apple somehow. And they're very secretive on the whole process, which is kind of the scary part about it.
Mm-hmm. Threema. Are you familiar with Threema?
What?
I have a comment here. It says Threema is a good substitute for Signal. It uses alphanumeric code instead of a phone number. I've never heard of Threema.
I have to note that one too.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that myself. I don't know. Yeah, thanks, Harold.
Would you ever buy a Chinese phone like OnePlus? By King and Machiavelli.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that Nexus 5X is a Huawei phone, isn't it?
Yep, it is Huawei. But my concerns are with the software, not so much the hardware.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's where you're on too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as concerned about it, I think, as some people might be, for sure. But I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I stay away from Chinese phones, especially OnePlus. OnePlus recently came out. They were starting to collect some data on people, collecting, and it was believed that this was being sent to the Chinese government and whatnot. But the thing is, that was all done on the software end of things. And OnePlus is one of the few manufacturers that's very open with custom ROMs. Mm-hmm. So you can install Lineage OS on something like OnePlus, and that kind of solves all that. In general, if you have a Chinese phone, just install something like Lineage OS or another privacy and security oriented ROM, and you should be okay.
Okay, there's Wire uses email and is often thought to be better than Signal.
Yeah, so Wire and Signal are typically the two often compared services.
Okay.
From a security perspective, Signal typically does beat Wire, but Wire, like the person says, doesn't require a phone number, which could definitely be a good thing.
What are the security differences on that?
The inclusion of open source software and the different ways that they handle metadata are the two big differences.
Okay. How about gaming? Also kind of fused. Like, what about DirectX stuff? Yeah, I don't know anything about gaming. I'm not a gamer.
Oh, okay, I can kind of speak about that. I'm not also too much of a gamer, but DirectX support isn't the best on Linux in general. If you're a gamer, games on Linux, Steam does have a Linux client, but it's going to be limited on the developer of the game, whether or not they're going to support Linux, and there are many less games for Linux than there are for Windows. Gamer, I'd first try out Linux on a live OS and see if the games that you play are available for Linux, and to see if they run well enough that you can just switch over to Linux. If not, you can always dual boot or have two separate hard drives that have Windows and Mac OS, and you can use something like Windows just for gaming, and no other information about yourself is on that operating system, and then use Linux for everything else. If you need help setting that up, I'm sure you out with that, and I'm sure he already has videos on the topic.
Check that. Okay. I think my comments have dried up a little bit.
What do you think the CIA would do with Edward Snowden if he came back?
I'm pretty sure if he were on his way back, there would be a mysterious plane crash.
Yeah, or some suicide or something would happen.
Yeah. I'm so overexposed. Yeah, it's the center of my sun is a little too bright. I'm very overexposed.
I have heard hardware companies like Intel are embedding software into chips and other hardware. Yes, you guys are right. Hardware can be a problem. In general, what I would be concerned about with Chinese manufacturers, I'd be more concerned with the software side of things. Hardware can be a problem, but hardware is also easier to pick up than stuff on the software side of things. Wait, I don't know if I said that right. But in general, I would still worry more about software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're talking about like embedded software and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Lavrin asks, if you dual boot with Windows and Linux, can't Linux just access the Windows partition? By default, yes, Linux does mount unencrypted drives, but that's why you should be encrypting your drives. Mm-hmm. If you encrypt Windows, then Linux can't access the Windows file with the Windows drive. And I actually made a video that kind of shows why you should be encrypting drives, because it's extremely important. And just with the USB, anyone can access your computer, and they can view all your files, and they can delete files, and they can load hidden files onto there. And it's kind of scary to think about how someone could potentially load illegal content on your computer and make it look like this is always on your computer.
Yeah,
so
and
that's definitely a concern.
Yeah, that's definitely is an issue. If you wanted to frame somebody, you wanted to go frame your boss, you could take a Linux distro, just like the little USB drive, plug it into their computer, transfer files right on over.
Yeah, no trace. It takes less than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always encrypt your drives. Veracrypt, even BitLocker, even though there's proprietary software, and the NSA and the FBI most likely have backdoors, to protect from the people around you is still better than no encryption. So always go for encryption.
And I like taking the approach of just keeping things off the internet and off the computer if I can. So like I have a backup computer. My backup computer is a separate drive that stays offline except for the very few times I'm using it, and it's a fully encrypted disk and all that. So that's really the thing that you need to do is don't rely on cloud services or online backup services, things like that.
Yeah. What are some open source encryption softwares for Linux? I know Veracrypt does have a way to encrypt on Linux. Is there anything else out there?
Well, the one you typically use in Linux is Lux, because it's effectively, it's a package. It's been around for a long time, and it's considered pretty secure. But really the way that works, you just need to make sure that Lux is installed on the system. Things like Tails will do that automatically. Linux Mint does that. I use Linux Mint also for my backup computer, because during install, do you want to encrypt the disk? Yes. Hit the disk encryption, and it's a very secure platform. And basically, if you need to unencrypt the drive, you just need to make sure, as long as LuxCrypt is installed on the system, then it can access the drive and decrypt it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I use.
King Machiavelli asks, how do you prevent your mic from recording you away from you? Recording you away from you? Yeah. I'd say there's a hardware solution and a software solution, although the hardware solution is always the most
extreme.
Yeah, it's probably the better way to go. Installing custom ROMs like Lineage OS on your phones is an amazing way to protect from that, as actually a built-in piece of software called Trust. It used to be called Privacy Badger or something like that. No, that's the extension, but they had something built in before, but they recently rebranded it. So pretty much anytime any app on your phone is requesting access to any permission, and you have to personally click the button that says accept. Mm-hmm. So if I download a calculator app onto my Android device and it requests to use the mic, by default, Lineage OS blocks that request, and I have to click accept for them to do that. And So there are software solutions, although this isn't too effective if hypothetically a hacker or something gets and they can just bypass those themselves. So hardware is the way to go. You can physically remove mics from your device, but that means you can probably never put them back in. Computers, it's easy. Just take out mics on your computers and use a third-party mic that's USB connected. You can take out the webcam entirely and just use third-party webcams.
That's generally what I would do. I mean, I have one Windows 10 computer in this office in case I have a client that needs me to do something on it. I don't think I've plugged it in or turned it on for at least 6 months at this point. But I intentionally got one with no connected microphones, there's no connected audio, and I disabled the wireless card. So
screw you, Microsoft.
That's right. No, Cortana, you may not listen in. So, go kill an alien somewhere, But that's kind of that. Can you address Spectre and Meltdown at all?
Spectre and Meltdown are pretty big issues, I'd say, nonetheless. They definitely affect most devices. Speak much about the specifics on how they infect people, but all I can say is that using something like NoScript and any script blocker that attack from affecting you. You can probably speak more about that than I can.
No, not really. I'm not a hardware guy.
Yeah. But if you use a script blocker, there is zero chance of that affecting you. So that's why I recommend using things like NoScript, which will by default stop those things from running. And then if you want to load something, you can.
Yeah.
About how to remove your information from like people gathering sites like Pipple, People, PIPL. Can't seem to get rid of his information.
Yeah, most of them you just can't. The thing that we need is we need to lobby our politicians to change the laws to give us the same constitutional rights for privacy against companies as we have against the government. That's what we need, but that's never going to happen. So
yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
You can manually request them to remove your information. But that means you're going to have to contact every site individually, and by default, they make this very complicated because they don't want your information removed. So you might have to send physical letters to their headquarters, the hoops to get it removed. So I apologize, Matt Thompson, for your information being there. Whole internet's set up, and it's not really anything that you could have done besides just educate yourself in advance. But the thing is, we don't push that on people.
There's another one of these that came out, and I, for the life of me, cannot remember the name of it, but it came out and it had a scary amount of publicly accessible information on people. They had a simple opt-out email thing, and I did that the day I learned that thing existed because it was scary, the amount of information they had on people. I just can't remember what the name of the site was now.
Yeah. And the scary thing is that this information comes from places that you normally wouldn't think it comes from. Services, when you answer security questions can be shared with third-party marketers. So anytime you answer lived or what's a relative of yours, when you say my relative is, X and Y, that information can be shared to help build your profile. So now these are your parents, and it knows that this was a childhood address that you used to live in, and it knows that this was your childhood best friend, and this is the middle school you went to. Kept private. So for security questions and things like that, always use a password manager and randomly generate random gibberish. It's good for your security because no one can guess it, and it's good for your privacy because it can't be shared.
That was one of the little things that was hinted at and played at in the old movie. Is it Now You See Me, right? Because of course that's how they got into the guy's main account. They were asking him all these little funny things, and he was playing along, not realizing he's giving him all the security questions to get into his bank account, right? And that's the thing is that especially since classically the most popular question is what's your mother's maiden name? Well, that's really easy. Look it up on Facebook.
Yeah, it's all over the internet. Think simple questions that people
and
are very open.
And if you knew the city I grew up and could guess what elementary school I went to, you could guess the name of my first grade teacher without a lot of challenge. And so you gotta not answer that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
we're
that's
reporting
something
that some of the other live streams are also lagging. Maybe lagginess is something with YouTube.
maybe. Hey, we need to be teaching people to think about the information they're giving. Is it necessary to give this information?
Mm-hmm.
Can it be falsified? If it can't be falsified, is it absolutely necessary to give that information? And if not, do you need the service?
Mm-hmm.
Having to give information that doesn't need to be given should be a last resort, and that's how it should always be. And that's going to stop companies from really abusing that and relying on customers being oblivious to the fact that this is a big concern.
Yeah. And that's key, is we need to take a bigger, better, more active role in that. We need to say, no, Spotify does not need to know my birthday. And if it's required, we need to have the gonads to say, no, I'm not going to use a service that's asking for that type of information. And that's unfortunately the things that that a lot of people don't think about, and a lot of and it goes back to the kids. The kids are taught to be good little boys and girls and answer all the questions that show up on the screen.
Exactly.
And it's so different than how the internet started, which is like, don't give anybody any real information on the internet. It's a dangerous place. It's still as dangerous as it was back then. We are just too used to it now, and a lot of it's our education has moved us in that way, which is sad.
Definitely. And I was never around when the internet was then, but I can tell that when I was in the store and I worked at the cashier, and I was one of the people that was forced to ask whether or not you wanted to sign up for our rewards program. It's very interesting to see how the older crowd typically never wanted to do it. Oh, you don't need my home address. You don't need any of this information, and then they decide not to go through with it when they find out the security number and all this different information. When I ask a 20-year-old who wants to save $10 on their purchase, that's $200+, up the information for a $10 discount. And that was constant. It wasn't just a one-time thing. Every day I would see people who didn't want to and people who wanted to. And the people who didn't want to typically are from the older generation.
Did you see there was it was a group on campus, it might have been 5 or so years ago now, where they wanted to see just what information people would give away, and so they were collecting all sorts of private data in exchange for cookies. Literal cookies. Of course, they all had the social media icons, so literally they were having people give them social security numbers in exchange for a Facebook cookie. The Instagram cookies were really popular. It's when Instagram was just brand new, and so people would give out their mother's maiden name, their first pet's name, everything they needed for a cookie. For crying out loud, people, if you want a cookie, I'll come make you one.
A nice little switch to Linux cookie. That'd be cool.
There you go. Actually, did you see my I have a Browser Wars video. Did you see the thumbnail for that?
No, I did. I saw the thumbnail because I went on your website, and that's one of the main highlights. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I made those. I made all those cookies. They were awesome. I'll have to do that some more. I'll have to make those again.
I'm sure it's a
browser
feeling knowing you're literally biting into the company of Facebook, just destroying it.
Well, I did the web browsers. Mine were all web browsers. So I did the Firefox, the Chrome, the Opera, and the Internet Explorer. I did you
got to bite into Chrome.
Yeah, Edge was particularly good. That was fun. I'll have to make those again sometime. We have a couple good questions came in on my end. What is the best password manager to use, and how do I keep my password safe on an external device?
Is that for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Personally, I'm not a very trustworthy. I don't really trust managers. I think that kind of breaks the purpose of using Password Manager. You're giving access to a company to handle your passwords and the keys. I don't recommend using cloud-based password managers, especially the popular ones like LastPass and 1Password and Dashlane. If you are going to go the cloud-based route, to go with Encryptor by SpiderOak. SpiderOak's a great company and they top of their stuff. But I'd always recommend doing a local-based password manager with an open source client like KeePass. It's local. You control your file, and it can be used on any device. It's great. What do you?
I mean, I don't always use password
Right.
managers. I use an encrypted Excel sheet that is on an offline computer.
That's a way to go too.
And print it out, because anymore, I mean, the chance of somebody breaking in here and stealing my password list and knowing what to do with it is much smaller than somebody hacking the computer. And if they break into here, they better be faster than my bullets, because they're getting shot. And so that's the times that I do use password manager. It is KeePass X, because it works great, encrypted file, local, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's just too much work for me. I would just rather encrypt a spreadsheet. That's what I do. I password protect a spreadsheet on LibreOffice. That's it. That's what I do.
Yeah, that's a good way to go. And also, you actually can make KeePass cloud-based, for those of you wondering. If you have an encrypted file, all you do is upload it to something like Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. And then you can sync that to all your other KeePass database files on your other devices. So it actually does function as a cloud-based password manager.
How about Nextcloud? Let's put it on Nextcloud instead.
Okay. All right. Nextcloud. John Oxley asked, in your pirating video, you didn't talk about how to do this safely, malware, free sources, etc. Do you have any tips? I don't want to encourage pirating to the point where I give you guys tips on how to do it. And that's why I didn't really tell you why and how you should do it. Whether or not pirating is ethical, and whether or not I recommend you do it. And to some people, I did say that it's fine to pirate, for these companies to expect you to succeed without being given the proper tools. But I'm not going to give you tips on pirating, because that's not what I teach people on the channel. My channel is not supposed to be used for illegal content. And I don't want to teach people how to do things illegally, because that's not what the information is supposed to be used for.
Yeah, and I thought you made a valid point, because I'm completely against it, but I thought you made a very valid point in that video where, because you go to school, and I mean, you know this, if you've taken any graphic design class in school, you've probably studied on Photoshop. And definitely. The fact of the matter is, though, why are we not teaching them how to do things on GIMP? Free, open source, it can do everything the Photoshop can do, you know? And that what it can't do, you can pick up with, you know, a couple other applications. And that's the thing, is that these companies, the schools and whatever else want you using Adobe, but if you're just starting out, we talked about this the other day, but you just can't. I mean, I don't want to throw the money away at that. I probably could, but somebody just starting in this kind of stuff, like I'm helping a 18-year-old get a YouTube channel started. You think an 18-year-old has the money to be throwing, you know, 30 or 40, 50, 70 bucks a month at Adobe Creative Cloud? No, not a chance.
Yep.
And so it's a valid argument that, hey, maybe we can do that, but I'm just like, why bother pirating? GIMP is just as good.
Yeah. Personal story is my whole channel was built using cracked software. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I mean, I cracked Vegas, I cracked Adobe, and I cracked every software that I needed to make my videos. My channel grew large enough that I was making enough money to start paying for this and still be able to pay for college, because I have to pay for my own bills. I don't have any financial support from parents or anything. Once I was able to do that, then I was fine to pay for the software. But most people don't have the position to do it. But there are free and open source alternatives out there if you have the option to do so. Photo editor, and we talked about DaVinci Resolve and how they're trying to, you know, really start to shake things up by offering a free service. I don't know if you got to try to use it.
Not yet. No, it is definitely on my list, and I'm going to be looking at it soon. But yeah, it's not yet. I've not looked at it yet. So keep an eye on my channel for that.
I quickly used it. I wasn't a fan. Just first thoughts, but at the same time, first thoughts are always change is never good for us, for people in general. First changes are always kind of tough. So I probably try to edit an entire project using it and try to find kind of the nice things about it. And maybe we'll switch to Resolve. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, here's a question for you. one, but best hardware for Linux! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! The whole question was in all caps, so I expect you to
Oh,
answer it with just as
oh,
much enthusiasm.
oh! You don't want me to answer that with as much enthusiasm. I'm going to redline my mic if I do that. Best hardware for Linux is really the thing about Linux is it's so broadly supported that it doesn't matter as much. Now, right now, you used to be able to go into a store and just pick up any old Windows 10 computer and wipe Windows and put Linux on it, and that's slowly becoming a little bit harder. Not much, so just do a little bit of research first before you do that. But if you want to build a computer, I don't. Again, I'm not a hardware guy as much, but at the same time, there's hardware that plays a little bit better. You don't wanna run NVIDIA graphics cards unless you absolutely have to, because those are classically problematic. Of course, some AMD cards can also be problematic. So you have that to keep in mind. For me, when I rebuilt this computer after my computer decided to turn into a smoking gun, and I rebuilt it, I honestly didn't even spend a ton of time researching it. I asked one or two people that knew hardware better than me. It's like, am I going to have problems with this motherboard on Linux? And no, not really. And so I went with it. So best option still. If you're building something from scratch, you probably won't have any issues. But avoid NVIDIA graphics cards. I think that Intel had more vector meltdown issues than AMD. Neither of them were immune, but I think AMD was a little bit better, and particularly if you're cost sensitive. I have an AMD Ryzen. I'm running this live stream on a Ryzen. I'm running 2 HD monitors. I'm running 2 HD cameras. Obviously, all the streaming stuff going on. I am using 12% of my CPU right now. Okay, that's a shocking small amount, and which is good. That this computer is doing so well, and this is a Ryzen 5 1600, which only cost me less than $200. I have a $100 gaming motherboard in here from MSI. I don't do Gigabyte, or maybe not do MSI board. MSI is a little bit hostile towards your bootloaders. I've had to fix those a few times. Gigabyte, that was just a pain for different reasons. Neither one of them has a problem, but they're not as user-friendly if you're using your computer like I do, installing a variety of different distros and things like that on it. So keep that in mind. But as far as best, and are there any backdoors for Linux? I'm sure somewhere a lot of people will say Systemd is a backdoor, yet I've yet to find any compelling evidence of that.
Yeah.
So I would avoid. I mean, there's some distros that are probably more problematic. Deepin costs a little thing because they had an ad tracker in their software center, which doesn't make it spyware, but it's certainly disconcerting. But for the most part, you don't find that because people are actively hunting for that type of stuff. So that's that.
Matt Thompson asked, is the Fourth Amendment enough for privacy in the U.S., or does there need to be more? Do non-U.S. countries have more privacy amendments in their constitutions? That's a loaded one.
Yeah. Do you want to start that, or you want me to start that?
Yeah, I'll start off with the first half. I'm going to start by saying I do not know anything about other countries and their privacy amendments, so I can't really speak for that. But for the Fourth Amendment, I wouldn't say that there's not enough for privacy in the Fourth Amendment. I would just say that it's not really geared towards our digital age, and it's not modernized enough to really work for the technology we have today. The amendment was passed, there was no internet. There was none of this privacy collection going on. And lots of it isn't applicable to the type of technology we have today. And I think that's the problem.
Well, actually, the biggest problem is the misconception. The Fourth Amendment, Privacy Amendment, gives us a right to privacy from the government, not from other people. And so there is no amendment about Google collecting your data. Now, where this gets hairy is what is called the third-party doctrine. So the third-party doctrine says that Google collects your data because you have signed up for a Google service and agreed to their terms and conditions. They can collect all the data that you want, including a snippet in that terms and conditions that says they can sell data or lend data or lease data to a third party. And if that third party happens to be the U.S. government coming in, the question is who owns that data? Is it Google or is it you? And so that raises a question, and that's one of what Edward Snowden's biggest questions was. Of course, there's the other case on that same trend going through about metadata and cell phones. Does a police officer or a police force need to get a warrant to search your location data on your phone? There's court cases about this going on right now. Because the phone companies say, well, this is our data, so we can gladly give it over. But if it really is the phone company's data, then yes, they can give it over all they want because it's their data. But if that is our data, then they need a warrant for that. And so that raises the issue. As far as third parties like European Union countries, they have a lot better privacy rules. That's what GDPR is all about, which is honestly overall a good law.
Yeah, it's a great law.
That protects people from businesses. That's what we need in this country, but it's not likely to happen because we're in an oligarchy.
Yeah. And it's good to get some insight on that. I didn't know that it only protected you from the government, not the company. So thank you for.
Yeah.
And also one of the reasons why we probably don't have protection from companies, and they do in Europe now with GDPR, is because the biggest companies in the world are based out of the U.S. And they're the people who are lobbying and getting these politicians to pass most of the laws, which means that it's going to be harder for us to get those laws passed to protect ourselves from these companies here in the States. Influence in the EU, and the EU is more able to protect its citizens as the companies lobbying as much there. So personally, I'm completely anti-lobbying, and I think most people are. And I really hope that's probably one of the biggest problems in our country right now. The fact that companies can lobby and get anything passed to benefit themselves over the public opinion.
Yeah, and that's where we have 83% of American population did not want Asia at Pi to destroy the net neutrality rules.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is that we're just I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, 80+% of the human population here, or just the population in the U.S., didn't support repealing net neutrality, yet it still happened.
Yeah, and I think we need to completely ban all lobbying, and we need to prevent any corporation from giving any money to any politician. They're businesses; they don't have any business in politics.
Exactly.
Period. And then each individual person should not be able to pay any more than maybe $1,000 to any political candidate. That way, a rich guy couldn't get what he wants, while the poor guy suffers because he doesn't have any money. Thousands of playing field enough that the rich guy he can't overwhelm it, but the poor guy could feasibly save up if it's important enough.
Yeah.
But that would make sense. This country's not about that.
Here's a question for you. Eric Defoe asked, "How did you guys become intellectuals of tech?"
That's kind of funny because all through high school I was, you might call me a technophobe. I didn't use technology, even calculators. I didn't use calculators. Famous part of the stream. Kitty.
Oh, Kitty.
Hey, Kitty's going to steal the show. Hold on. I got my headphone clogged. Kitty's stealing my headphones. All right. There we are. All right. I got a kitty. All right. So I didn't use any of those, but then I was like, I'm going to go off to college, and I bet that computers are important for college, so I better learn how to use them. And of course, back then, computers were expensive. I think I paid just shy of $2,000 for my first real computer. And you better be darned if I am going to spend $2,000 on a computer and be a bumbling idiot with it. And so I learned what drivers were, and I learned how to install the operating systems, and I learned how to break stuff, and I learned how to fix the stuff I broke. And I spent the time. And we did the same thing. I still have my graphing calculator here from high school, and this thing's a dinosaur. Yeah, TI-85. I came from a very poor family. This calculator cost $100 and it was required. The fact that my mother would take $100 I mean, that meant we ate less that month to buy this stupid thing. And you better be darned if I'm going to take a $100 calculator and use it to add 2 plus 2. So I learned how to code, and I learned how to write programs. And then that just kind of moved on into, I built my first website in the late 90s. And of course, I took a little break from most tech as I finished college and did the whole grad school route. And then about halfway through grad school, I had enough looking at cancer cells through microscopes. And so side hobby, picked up web design again. And then 2010, I just went full time into my own tech business. So, it's just been immersion really more than anything.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really cool background.
Yeah.
For me personally, I wouldn't call myself an intellectual. Too nice of a word to say. I'd say I'm a person who's trying to learn, and I'm trying to you guys. I wouldn't call myself an intellectual in any way, but I've always been really into tech. In middle school, I was always a person going through my phone, messing with all the settings, trying to figure out how to make it as fast and as efficient as possible. I was trying to remove system services. I have ruined more operating systems than I've kept. Breaking iOS is not an easy task, but I somehow did that. I broke Windows on more occasions than one, and this is all in middle school, so obviously I was freaking out every time I broke a computer because I didn't really know how to fix it. I just broke everything. I broke my iPhone because I wanted to take it apart in middle school, and I was crying to my mom because I went to her and I'm like, I broke my phone, I was trying to fix it, and it's now not powering on when I try to turn everything on. I don't know how, but everything magically worked. I just pushed the screen down a little bit and everything turned on and I was good to go. In 8th grade, I kind of just had a thing for hardware and software. And I started getting more to the privacy and security realm of things once I started looking into VPNs, my school's filters, because my school had pretty restrictive filters, which didn't allow me to access YouTube for educational videos, because YouTube's a great educational platform. And I think it's wrong for them to just block YouTube, which can actually be utilized in great ways in education. Mm-hmm. So I found a VPN, which was a free VPN, and it allowed me to bypass school Wi-Fi. And then I looked on YouTube, and there was nothing on there. They were either all scams or they didn't work. Hmm. And I uploaded my free VPN for iPhone video, which got like 100,000 views within 6 months or a year. For a first video on YouTube, that's pretty rare and pretty crazy. I kept uploading videos, and I think it's still my 4th or 5th most popular video, which I'm not necessarily proud of, but that's my story.
Yeah.
Breaking is learning.
It is.
I guess is.
Yeah. I broke a computer once bad enough to the point I had to take it back to a shop to get it free fixed. But other than that, everything else I fixed. In fact, when they first delivered me the computer, I think I only had 256 colors turned on. Do you remember those days when a computer only had, you'd go into Windows and turn on 16, 256, or 16-bit color?
No, I don't. I wasn't around.
Yeah, we had, so I'd turn on the computer and it looked fine because, I mean, we went from black screens with green text to a computer with 256 colors, and that was a big deal. And so by playing around with stuff, I figured out that, there's a new driver in this box that wasn't installed. So I figured out how to install the driver, reboot the computer, and 16-bit. Whoa, 16 million colors. And then pictures were beautiful. And it's just like, wow, and those were the days. But, I mean, you had to learn how to do stuff. And that's the thing is that the core thing is you do not be afraid. And that's the thing with Linux, particularly with live keys. Man, boot your computer into a live key. If you're extra paranoid, take the hard drive out first, boot it into a live key, and then just break that thing. And then see if you can figure out how to fix it. If you can't, reboot it. Do it again. Tinker, play. That's what you got to do. It's just gotta do that.
That's the best way to learn.
Yep.
Don't take courses online on how to use Linux if you don't have to.
Yeah. Go
in Linux and try to figure it out, and go on and search how to do certain things. And when you do it,
How do you move? How do you move
going.
a file from this directory to that directory? Search that up online, on Start Page or DuckDuckGo. Something that's not Google, please. Get Google out of your vocabulary, by the way.
Yeah. Don't Google it. Start Page it or DDG it.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the first movie that had Google used as a verb was actually Journey to the Center of the Earth. Can anybody confirm that? Because that was 2012, 2013. It says, what are you doing? I'm Googling at 13,000 feet.
Huh. Maybe it is. I have no idea.
First, but that's certainly one of the early ones. Let's see. When is the stream going to end? I need to go to bed. I don't know. when 2 comment threads die out.
Yeah.
How are you guys secure right now, video chatting? Right now, we're probably not all that secure, but that's okay.
Actually,
if we wanted to have a private
secure.
Conversation, we'd boot up Nextcloud, you know?
Say we're really secure right now. We're just not very private.
Okay. Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. I'd claim that Google has some of the best security in the world.
And I would probably agree to that. Yeah.
That is one good thing. They're very strong in security, although privacy is an entirely different subject there. But I've never heard of like a Google outage before or a Google hack yet. I can't think of one.
Disable
Yahoo, on
AMD
the other hand.
PSP in your BIOS. Run a BIOS update and turn it off in your advanced settings. AMD PSP? I'm not... which one's that one? I'll have to look into that. Computer science back those days to learn how to use computers. See, this is another comment. You know, I don't believe, tell me what you think. I don't think we have a tech savvy generation. The whole world's like, oh, this is a tech savvy generation. I don't think we're tech savvy. I think we're tech morons in this generation. What's your thought?
I definitely get your argument. And that's a good way to put it, because we're tech. It's 2 different definitions here, I think. We are tech savvy in the sense that everyone I know, that's part of my generation, and the younger generations are attached to tech, and their entire lives are digital at this point. So they are tech savvy in that sense, but it's more, a better way to say it is they're tech. They're more involved with tech, but they're not very savvy about it. They don't really understand how their data is being collected. They don't understand how this service is doing this rather than doing this. They don't understand that, you know, an ad can be tracking you across different platforms, and why when you go on Amazon and search for shake weight, you're going to start getting shake weight ads on all these other services. People don't really understand like how the internet works. I can ask half my friends how the internet works, and almost none of them will be able to tell me how the internet actually functions. Just the basics. So I think that tech savvy is definitely something that is a weakness, but everyone's very involved.
We have
dangerous.
a lot of we have a lot of kids that can point and click and can find an app and know how to search. But I did a video, I don't know, a couple months back. In fact, it was the last top 5 I did before my computer blew up, and it was the top 5 things kids did not learn in school. Because I'm co-writing a book with somebody in high school, and he doesn't know how to save a file. Like, literally, I said, give him a Surface computer where we're actually writing stuff. It's like, all right. So he wrote a snippet I needed, and it's like, did you save the file? He's, how do you do that? What? Oh. And it's just like, and it's not to say he doesn't know what he's doing. He's a very intelligent person. The problem is the school system's gotten so addicted to Google, he doesn't know how to do anything else. Everything is Google Docs. Everything's Google Docs. Stop going to do Google Docs just because you need to write a document. Boot up LibreOffice.
Yeah.
And and so we don't have tech savvy kids. We have a bunch of tech morons.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And there's a little bit of confusion in my thread right now. They're asking, trying to get at here. It's very hard to describe. I'd say that someone who's, because a good way, Artemidorus here explains it very well. There's tech fluent and tech savvy. Tech fluent is someone who is very active with technology and they're using technological devices. So someone who's tech fluent could be someone who knows enough about tech to do a phone review. I review a phone, they talk about, the phone makes good calls, there's good audio quality. I use this phone all day. I can tell you that it's got good signal. The screen's very nice. It's a very high pixel density screen. How that works. They don't tell you the math behind pixel density. They don't tell you the resolution of the display and how that impacts the images you view. They don't tell you that Apple uses 1610 and why that's different from 16:9 resolution. They don't tell you the technology that's used for the cellular connection. They don't tell you how many bands and whatnot. I think that's the difference. There's surface level knowledge and then there's like in-depth savviness of knowing how the technology works. I'm not sure if that clears things up in my thread.
No, I never understand when seeing people doing laptop computer reviews. You can lift it up with 2 fingers.
Yeah.
I've never understood why is that so important.
Box. The packaging. It's all about the experience.
I guess. I don't know. Linux Mint startup.
I don't like unboxings.
Brand new hardware, no tweaks and crashes. Okay. TechLore,
what time is it where you're at?
For the hard drive. It is 11:13.
Okay.
Want to wrap this up soon, or what do you think?
That's up to you. Let's see. I'm gonna look for any last questions here.
Sure.
Let me know if you see anything. So if you guys have any questions, this is
I guess we'll do a final call for questions. Of course, I have a tradition on my channel. People are aware of feeding the kitty.
I apologize. Here on my channel, I will make myself full screen for the first time.
Yeah, I can't get two kitty cams down to the kitty, so we're just gonna have the one. That's all right. But if you're on my channel, you know what I can do though for guys watching my channel, I'll go full screen there on the kitty. There you go, kitty. Oh boy! Oh boy!
Anthony Marin is asking me what Linux distribution I'm using. Anthony Marin, I have to use Windows for my content creation because I use the Adobe Creative Cloud. So my main editing desktop runs on Windows 10. I know it's awful. I hate Microsoft. I hate Windows, but I have to use it to put out my videos. I really wish that I could use GIMP and the other services, but I can't get into them myself. But for my own personal laptop, which is where I store all my personal documents, and that's where I do all my personal stuff, I was running Elementary OS. It was awful. Don't use it. I switched to Linux Mint, and it's all right. I wasn't a big fan, and now I'm currently running Debian. Or Debian. I don't know how it's pronounced. But I have had very good experience with that, and that's currently what I'm using.
Yeah, Debian is very good. I use that that's actually currently running on my media PC over here. So
nice. But Bobby Bob says, but if everyone was tech savvy, wouldn't you just increase how much knowledge you need to be tech savvy? I don't think so. It's just knowing. It's just understanding something.
It's not like the college situation where everyone goes and so you got to raise the bar to the graduate degree. Once you know the basics, you are probably set to go a little bit better than other people are, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And that's like saying if everyone knew, if more people knew what doctors knew, would that mean that being a doctor doesn't qualify you to be a doctor? And I wouldn't say no, you're still a doctor. It's just more people now know the information needed to be a doctor. I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Yeah.
Someone asked last minute, what do you think about the Copperhead OS controversy? We touched on this earlier. Tom summarized it really well. If you want to repeat that.
It's sad. It's sad that we're losing what otherwise was a great distribution. because really it had a lot of good hardening for people that are power users of their phone and needed the extra security. It was a great ROM, but it seems as though we've lost it. But hopefully the developer has been offered to work on other projects, so hopefully he'll be back. So
that's great to hear. I didn't know that, so thank you for letting us know about that.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it until a couple days after it happened, but one of my viewers sent it over to me, so I decided I did a piece on it on Thursday, I think, when I first learned about it. Like 30 minutes before the stream, I get there's tons of things like, but it's important enough. I spent the time doing it.
Yeah.
If everyone knew what doctors knew, we'd all basically be WebMD diagnosing ourselves. Sometimes you have to step outside the fishbowl where you're constantly looking out. Yeah. Okay. And that's true, you know. All right, can you say again what you guys are using to be secure video chatting right now? Well, right now we are using Google Hangouts. When we had our conversation the other day, when we weren't streaming it and weren't relying on the quality being better, we were using Nextcloud, which is end-to-end encrypted, and I control all of it. So that's the difference. I guess before we wrap it up completely, how do people find you and support you and what you're doing?
My channel, you can just search up TechLore on YouTube, or you can go to techlore.tech. And right now the site's being updated, so kind of work with the UI right now. But yeah, you can support the channel by just following it. You know, I'm not going to ask you guys to do anything. Just if you care about privacy and security, then our channel's great, and it ties really well with Linux, and it talks a lot about what Tom talks about. And for the TechLore community, Tom, what do you have to say about your channel?
My main channel is at switched to Linux. I don't do just Linux. I switched to Linux because of privacy stuff, and so I talk about privacy. I do Friday night news shows. I'll do some distros, I'll do some software, and I'll do some advanced stuff. Mostly it's all from a user base. I'm not a Linux geek in the basement, tinkering with stuff. I'm a practical Linux guy. So you get my channel as a weird mishmash of life and philosophy and computers and just living and having a good time with it. So, and you can find me at Switch to Linux, and I have a website at switchtolinux.com and Patreon page and a bunch of other stuff you can find.
Yeah, I would highly recommend you guys check it out. He has a really great community going on, and he's very consistent. So if you want to get, more dosage of security and privacy, just go there and check out his channel because it's great. And I think, is that it?
I think that's it. I think I'm at the bottom. I'm not sure. Cool War Boy, is that comment to me or somebody else? I don't know. Can you find me if I get it? I'm not sure. Let's see. What else is on yours? How about our smart speakers for privacy? Oh, we could just keep going, couldn't we? Okay, if it has the word smart in front of it, just don't use it. Just don't.
That's a good rule. Very good rule.
Now,
unless no. There's no unless.
Well, I have, you probably don't know what it is, but in the corner of the red light up there, that's an IP camera. So I have things like that, but they are not accessible by apps or outside the network. For me, if I'm not here to view the feed on that, I have to go into my own VPN to get to that. There's no outside access. So anything that has any outside access, you want to avoid. And I mean, unless there's a very specific, you have to weigh it. That's the thing. You have to weigh it. In reality, most smart things, the problems are too manifold than anything else.
Definitely. Especially, just avoid things like the Alexa, Google Home, all of that. It's going to do much more harm than good.
I have another tradition on my channel. Anytime somebody talks about those, I have to say, Alexa, order unicorn meat. All right, proceed.
All right, I'll try. Alexa, order unicorn meat.
Yeah.
Some of them. That's a good one. I should start using that.
Yeah.
Or hey Siri.
Oh no. Hey. Okay Google, play Spice Girls.
That's similar to our rule with the dark web, kind of. We don't use dark, although yours is much more effective in the sense that it actually, affects the person's life directly right in the moment.
It's just a little warning. Don't listen to my streams if you have a smart speaker in your house, because yeah. But anyway, you were onto something good. What were you saying there?
Just the dark web should be completely. It's a term that should be thrown out. It's a term created by media and people that try to make it seem like it's something worse.
It's the place you go to buy drugs on a hitman. Yeah, I know. We know.
Yeah, which is not true. It's the private web. We call it the private web, and that's what it is. That's what we should be calling it.
Yeah. All right. Political Monkey developers no longer wanted to support. I remember Steve Gibson talked about that. Okay. Crap, now listen to the Spice Girls trying to get a refund on a unicorn meat. Well played, Keegan. Well played. So I pulled up the Spice Girls thing from the book I'm doing right now in Outdoor Philosophy, is Building a Bridge to the 18th Century by Neil Postman, and I actually misspoke last week. I thought the tech one was last week, but it wasn't. It was on Progress. So I think this week is tech. So it should be up in about tomorrow afternoon, about noon. I'll put it up. But he's talking about technology, and I literally think he picked the most absurd thing he could possibly think of to write down as an example of his book. And what does he do? A doorknob you could talk to. And don't you believe it? We got him now. So, yeah.
All right, Tom, I think... Do you have anything else to say?
No, I think that's about it. Let's go ahead and wrap it up at that point. We'll kind of conclude on my end here. Kitty's going to wave bye to everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye, kitties. Bye-byes.
Okay. Everyone watching TechLore, make sure to check out Switch to Linux. Once again, if you have any questions about Linux, or if you want another channel that's heavily passionate about privacy and security, he has an amazing account. That's all I have left to say here, and I will end the stream once he's done doing his last few words.
All right. Yep. And once again, check out TechLore at his channel over there. Easy to find. Lots of cool advice, particularly VPN-y type stuff. And I love that off-grid video. Check that one out. Although you did say it's a little outdated, but still has a lot of good information in it. So check that out. You said one of your next videos is going to be another review of Proton VPN, right?
Oh yeah, we have a great lineup this month. NordVPN 1-year update, Molvad, which is another very private and secure VPN, and the Proton update. So those are 3 very, very close services, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a good result.
Okay, sounds good. So keep an eye on all that. So we will talk to you guys later. Hope you enjoy switching to Linux. And how do you end your shows?
I don't really have anything yet.
All right. Peace out.
To be honest.